Hydrofield cuts through my neighborhood.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Lucky, with Steve over there.
What's up, people?
And Leo down there. And we have a special guest with us tonight. I'm going to add her right in here. Here's
Hello.
Gamma Raes. So good to have you.
I'm very happy to be here. I love your intro. I felt like that was it embodied you.
Steve made that for me.
He
and
did
the music. I'm so excited to have you here tonight. Like, I feel like we have so much like that we have been talking about and that we have to like continue to talk about. And like, so why don't you give everyone a little bit of your background and like, you know, like your podcast and what you're doing, and then we can see where we go from there.
Yeah, so I'm Gamma Raes, and I am a radical feminist / TERF. These names are given to me. I literally started my online persona as Gamma as a gamer, and like spent time while I was pregnant, like streaming. When I was on maternity leave, I like had the camera just to like hear, and I would legit be like breastfeeding, and my baby would be asleep in my lap, and I would stream, and that's like what I did. And then, you know, fast forward to like January, Hogwarts came out, and I was enjoying it, streaming it, thriving off of it. Oh my gosh, my voice. And then all of a sudden, I started getting called a TERF and a bigot and a transphobe and cis and this, that, and the other for playing a video game. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm none of these things. I got called a racist Nazi, like all within the same like hour. And I was like, you know what? Time out. And I deep dived. It was the same time the Jeffrey Marsh Shumiran stuff went down. And then I watched like all of this whole community just turn onto these people. And then I realized that there were people in the community going, oh, no, that's not us. That's not us. And then you start seeing this rift. And it was like a month after I guess I peaked as to gender ideology and everything that I really was like, all right, I'm going to just start dedicating everything that I do to exposing the cult of gender ideology, because I got frustrated. I was like making a TikTok and I was like, that's it. I'm done. It's a cult. I'm exposing it. My first podcast episode will be next week. And I think this is the first time in 10 weeks that I did not post at like 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. Like I said, I'm bringing you all my energy today, and podcast, you know what? 9 weeks straight is pretty good. I think I deserve a little break sometimes, you know?
Yeah, because you haven't been just doing the podcast, right? Because I'm trying to catch up on what you've been doing, but like we met in like Twitter land, which is like where a lot of this gender ideology is really like spinning right now. Like that's where the conversation's happening. That's where Twitter spaces are happening, and that's where we kind of like cross paths. And I'm so grateful, because I was like, all those names that you were called. Same. Absolutely. The same thing. And like, I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I have friends who are trans. What are you talking about? And then they would come at me and say, well, you're hateful for saying the truth. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what I'm saying what I've always said. I like kind of felt like I got like smacked on the side of the head, like with all of this. I'm like, what do you mean? I was always inclusionary. I was always inclusive of trans people. I have them in my life. I was in my best friend's wedding last summer, and and he's a trans person. Like I was the best man in a dress. You know, like, what are you talking about? Like there was men in beards and dresses at the wedding. Like it wasn't a thing. Like these are have always been my people. But there was never a denial of biology. There was that was always just. We didn't live in denial land. And like, you know, if somebody used she instead of he, it was whatever. It was you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
And I refer to my friend as he because that's what he prefers. And out of respect, I try to always use the pronouns that a person prefers and the names that they prefer, and just, be generally a respectful person. And I think for me, what really hit me is when I would talk about things, or I started looking at it and like going, well, what about the kids though? Like, why is this happening to kids? And I started seeing detransitioners. That's what brought me to the point where I'm just like, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. This is not okay. Because I always was adults for me that transitioned in my life. It was always, it was never like the kids. So how is that for you? Like, what really like...
I never met anybody who was trans in high school, right? I mean, there are a couple of people that grew up and became trans as adults, right? But it wasn't something that was like, this is what you do in high school. There was never any question about that. The LGBT was about being gay. And that was it. It was like about the sexuality. And even I think in like the early mid 2000s, it was still LGBT. Like the T was tacked on in later years. So
yeah, because I've been part of that community for like 2 decades. And so I say LGB, because that's naturally what it is for me. And the T, I say LGB and T, because it's kind of like I'm saying, hey, I get it, you're kind of like a cousin to us, but the LGB literally covers most people. If they're lesbian, gay, or bi, then that covers them, and that's a sexuality. The T is not a sexuality, and people get that really confused.
I really appreciated when an LGB account came into the space the other day and said, to make it clear, LGB inherently includes those who are T that are bisexual or are gay. Like that is what it includes. But other than that, it doesn't, the T is not necessary. And it hurts some people. It doesn't hurt other people. I mean, I guess you get it or you don't, for me, it was starting to see, when I started going down the rabbit hole, seeing like Jeffrey Marsh was being identified as a alleged predator, right? I apologize if you hear my dog. And then people were like going for them. How dare you come for this entire community of people? And I was like, that's groupthink. That's not normal. That's not okay, right?
Because who groupthink?
They have like cults groupthink, which is why my podcast is called Exposing the Cult of Gender Ideology. And LGB, it used to be completely different. It wasn't weaponized in the way that it's weaponized now. And they're using trans as like an agenda. I mean, there's so many rabbit holes to go down. We could talk about totalitarian control, using ideologies to gain that control over us, the Orwellian aspect, 1984, censorship, newspeak, thought police. And we could do all these different rabbit holes. But at the end of the day, what Gamma, my focus is, and it makes people so mad, if you're going to talk about it, you need to talk about all of it. No. I am exposing the cult of gender ideology and how that ideology is being weaponized, and the people in it act like they are in a cult. You can't have a dissenting opinion. You can't speak of things outside a line. If you're a detransitioner, you were never really trans. If you are a, I don't know what we're allowed to say on here.
You mean, according to the cult's their own phrasing of the words. And this is what we're repeating right now. What we have been told is the truth. We are following along what they have told us. With what you're saying, like because I understand where you're going with this. The language.
Some people don't get it. So I'm very intentional with using the cult's language, the way that they address situations. When they look at a trans woman who has done something that they don't like, they say, "Well, that's not a trans woman. That's just an AGP. That's just a cishet white man, if you will." This is their terms, right? And the thing is, that you can't do that. Not with self-ID, not with the GRA in the UK, which is the Gender Recognition Act. You cannot sit there and tell us that we must acknowledge the pronouns. We must acknowledge that these people want to identify as a woman. And then when they do something wrong where they detransition, you say, no, they're not trans. They weren't ever really trans. They're not a part of our community. That's gaslighting, and that's exactly what cults will do. Look at what they did with Leah Remini and the Church of Scientology, right? There's a literal letter dedicated, an official letter on their website dedicated to basically just shitting on Leah Remini and saying she was never really a Scientologist. Like, she just was in it for the fame and the fortune. I mean, if you spend 20 years, like 2 decades of your life in a cult, I'm pretty sure you're one of their members, despite the rhetoric that the cult actually is trying to push, that no, you're not a part of it. You were never a part of it. Like, you didn't get it, so you're out. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that, and then people think that this is hateful or whatever when we're calling it out. It's like, no, but we're following. Those are the rules that they made. They made self-ID a rule. They made it like, so my friends that I knew, like, oh my gosh, I think it's been probably like a good 15 years ago. A friend of mine was going through transition for years. And I'm talking about counseling for years. As an adult, had to go through counseling for years to, you know what I mean? Like psychotherapies and stuff like that. And like did all the steps, because it used to be that there were safeguards in place. It used to be that they had to, like, you know, go to a doctor to, you know what I mean? Before, and you went through years of therapy before we could even transition and everything like that. So like for me, that's what I thought was still happening. But now I look at it and I go, whoa. So like, in the last, you know what I mean? I don't know exactly when it happened. Everyone says that it happened about 2016 when we got our, when we got our, you know, gay marriage, you know, the right to marry.
Oh,
who we wanted to marry. That's when everything kind of like shifted from LGBT to then the trans.
But wasn't the gay marriage in the early 2010s? Because I thought it was in high school, like 2008-ish.
Obama passed that like 2009, I think, or 8.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, because I was in high school. My dad went to a gay wedding in DC, one of the first ones. So
like 2008.
Was it 2008? Okay. Well, maybe I'm just saying
the DSM, but you might be thinking about the DSM-5.
Oh, the DSM-5. That's when they changed that. Okay,
when they changed what it meant to be gender dysphoric.
Yeah, they. Go ahead.
Okay, so I have an association to this DSM-5 thing, and it's related to. Were you in the space where the trans person came in and said that all trans women are autogynephiliacs and that all children post-puberty with gender dysphoria still are AGPs, which is, for reference, autogynephiliacs.
I know exactly who you're talking about. I was in that space with you. So we should like differentiate though really quick between what a transgender and transsexual is though for people. Yes. Anybody that's listening that doesn't understand, because there is a difference between transsexual and transgender. that there's a distinction there. So transsexual is you actually have a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis from a doctor, and you are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, or you know, some people call it body dysmorphia, whatever, but it's gender dysphoria. It's at the DSM-5. You actually get that from an actual doctor as a diagnosis, just like I have actual PTSD that was diagnosed from a doctor. Like I went to a doctor for years and they diagnosed me with PTSD. I don't say I have PTSD. I'm not a self-ID PTSD, because a lot of people will say, yeah, I have PTSD from my childhood, but they don't actually have an official diagnosis. And there's a difference there. So there is, and like, that's why you'll see people say like, I'm actually autistic, as opposed to people saying I'm autistic, because people are differentiating between actually having a diagnosis of something and self-IDing as something, because a lot of people are self-IDing and self-diagnosing is basically what that is. So transgenderism is an umbrella, right? Yeah. It's an umbrella term that kind of catches everybody, you know, and everybody's under that umbrella. So there's a difference between the two. But go ahead. I just wanted to like make sure that we put that in there, because this is a very complicated topic. It's very complex.
It's important, and I like to say that transgender people, I mean, they fall into gender ideology. So if someone's saying I'm a transgender person, if they haven't found out about the transsexual community and actually do identify or relate more to them, they should probably do some research. That's Buck Angel, Blair White, Laura's in there. They're on Twitter. It's a really great space, and they do that once a week every Thursday. But this person came in, and they say that they're more similar in the thoughts of the transsexuals. But I didn't appreciate this because I think that it's dangerous to say that children with gender dysphoria are autogynephiliacs. These are typically like 50-year-old men. These are men who.
Let's explain what that is. What is a autogynephiliac? Because or an AGP? Because like people don't, you know what I mean? Like if people are listening later on, I want them to understand what these terms are that we're using.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up an official definition so that nobody can come at me about how I've described it. But I'm researching Dr. Zucker and Blanchard right now. In that space, that person had mentioned Zucker repeatedly, but it wasn't actually Zucker who said that all transsexuals are AGPs. This was Blanchard, who I haven't gotten to. Zucker, I've been researching, but I'll get back to him. So autogynephilia is defined as a male's propensity to be sexually aroused by the thought of himself as a female. So these are the trans-identified men, the TIMs, the transgender women who come into female spaces and get hard-ons in our bathrooms, right? Like to watch us in the locker room and feel vindicated and like affirmed to be in a shower with naked women showering around them in the locker room. These are the kind of men that we don't want in our spaces, right? These are also the kind of men who go.
It's a sexual thing for them. Like it's a philia. Yeah. So like it is a sexual arousal that they get being in those spaces and basically being like what they perceive as a woman is what gives them that sexual gratification. So I want to be clear about that. So that's the men who are forcing, like who are chest feeding infants. These are the men who are going into women's bathrooms and exposing themselves. These are men that are going, you know what I mean? There's a whole like, you know, a whole category. And this isn't us making it up. This is documented. This is not us making it up. You can look it up.
I mean, there are people who admit to it. I mean, if you go to like the Reddit thread MTF, there's a whole bunch of autogynephilia going on in there. I mean, it's absurd. And it's all over TikTok. I mean, it just is. And people it's just allowed to exist. But I think that it is dangerous when you start to say that all transsexual people are autogynephiliacs. I think that that's not inherently true. I think that those who recognize that they have a biological difference, they recognize that they have a mental illness or disorder, as some refer to it as, that this is not something that they would want for to be a norm as a result of struggling to understand yourself or be okay with yourself. I mean, if we look at situations like, I stand by this forever, I believe that transgenderism is being used as a form of conversion therapy. If an adult chooses to do this for themselves, then I think that that's fine. But when you're dealing with children, it absolutely is a form of conversion therapy. You're telling young girls who might be butch lesbians that they are trans men. They're telling little boys who are effeminate that they should be a girl because of internalized homophobia. Kelly Cadigan admitted that in a tweet. My internalized homophobia is the reason that I transitioned. Whether or not you were making a joke or just trying to get a rise out of people, you said that on the internet forever. And it literally validated the episode that I had made the night before about conversion therapy. So, you know, it's horrifying to see these children being mutilated, the breasts being cut off. Dr. Blair Peters in Washington admits to doing surgeries, performing vaginoplasties on young 17-year-old boys who have never had sex, who've been on puberty blockers for years, so they don't understand. They've never had.
They don't even know what they're missing. These kids are not going to know what they're missing. They're not going to know. Like they're never going to know the part of their life that they're missing. And that's really heartbreaking to me.
Yeah, to go through life with never having actually experienced life and mutilating yourself because your parents are afraid not to, and you've been manipulated into saying that you should kill yourself, even if you wouldn't really, right? This is a manipulation tactic that are being taught to children as a way to be able to transition. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Bex has a
Yeah.
question for us. So just I want to make sure we read it out loud because anyone who is just listening. So Yepex is asking Lucky Burritos and Gamma, do you think some people are being manipulated or pressured into doing conversions to fit in? Yes, absolutely. I know people that have come to me and told me that entire friend groups of teenage girls are going to the clinics together and that there is mass pressure for these girls to conform and to fit in and or become like or get labeled as a non-binary, or you have to be trans, or you have to be part of LGBT, you know what I mean, like you have to be part of that somehow, or else you're not fitting in. It is become like I don't even know, like it's a social contagion. I believe, I really do.
I would agree. If you look at Wyoming, I believe it is, there's a case in which, and I said this in a space the other day, there's a case where a teenage girl said she thought she was trans, so she started socially transitioning at school, didn't tell her parents, and then like halfway through the school year or semester or something says to the teacher, hey, I think I made a mistake. I don't want to be trans. I want to go be called my real name. I want to be called, I want to come to school and present as a girl. And the teacher basically was like, no, how transphobic. You have internalized transphobia. That's why you're doing this. You need to stick to it because that's who you are. You're not a girl. You're a boy. And the girl was like living her life as this transgendered boy in school until the point where it was like she couldn't do it anymore, broke down, told her parents, and then her parents got involved, and now they're like they're suing the school district or the teacher or something for basically manipulating a child, which is what cults do. They bully you, they demean you, they make you feel less than.
It's
just so that they're like,
you can't, like, what the hell is going on? Why are they trying to come between parents and their kids? Like, I feel I am so grateful that my daughter is 19 and that she, like that this wasn't something that she was pressured into, and that she's the kid that, I've gotten calls from the principal, because she stood up to her entire class because someone was being bullied, because that's who I raised. That's how I raised her, is to be the kid that stands up against that kind of thing.
Good for you.
You know what I mean? I've gotten several calls from the principals like, hey, it's not an emergency. This is a good call, but I have her in the, I have Sky in the office and this is why. And I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm such a proud mom because she stood up, like standing up to all the kids in your entire class in third grade is a big deal. Doing it again in front of an entire lunchroom of kids because some kid's saying stuff that's inappropriate, that's an even bigger deal. She's just not been one that to just go along to get along, and she has a mind of her own. And like, her and I don't agree on everything. Like, that's completely normal. It's normal to not agree on everything 100%. But like, we need to be realistic that, like these kids are being pressured. And if they're being pressured at school and they're being pressured, like, and they're given this like acceptance at school, and then they want to come out and like say, no, that wasn't right. You know what I mean? I don't feel that way. Then that needs to be accepted too. You can't, that's just absolutely mind-blowing that a teacher in schools are putting that divide, putting that wedge between parents and their kids. That's atrocious. That should outrage everybody.
And the thing is that it's like not. I was actually in a space earlier today where a father in Washington was talking, and he said, you'd be surprised how many people that I kind of make a little lightheaded joke about what's going on with the state taking away children if they don't gender affirm them. And it's like this awkward, sigh of relief because people aren't able to like release and speak about how scared they are. Because so the way I look at it, for the TRAs and to say that the state of Florida is a fascist state and DeSantis is fascist for not completing gender affirming care, so not mutilating children, not chemically castrating them, not allowing this to happen, not allowing opposite sexes to be in same sex spaces, right? Apparently that's really fascist, but not a state in which they say that they can take your child away from you and put it into a LGBT friendly family, literally like rooted in gender ideology, right? That seems a little bit off to me. To put a child into a place that is going to specifically be raised in an ideology sounds more fascist than not.
It sounds like you're removing a kid from their family, and instead of giving them counseling or therapy and like figuring out the root problems, you're just going to take them away and you're going to insert them into a family that, you know, might harm, you know, like we know that foster care is not the best for a lot of kids. A lot of kids have trouble in foster care. There's a lot of things that go wrong. So, I mean, like, not that everyone's home is perfect, but we need to be offering services to help people, not take their kids away.
Right.
What Sage says here, yeah, the minute we moved this from a rare medical condition to a lifestyle identity that is being pushed as an option to ease the normal stresses of adolescence, we're in trouble. That's exactly right. I agree.
Very well worded.
Yeah, she's amazing with words. Like,
it's true. It's the normal stress of adolescence. I mean, the studies show that 88% of children who go through puberty, gender dysphoria goes away. And I was reading some of these posts that the person was referencing as autogynephilia. And it was literally a teenage boy not understanding his body and the changes that it was going through. Why are we teaching children about sex and how to have it rather than puberty and how to get through it?
I don't understand. Okay, because kids, Miriam Grossman, she wrote a book. It's called In Trans Nation, and she said that it's at I don't remember if it was 4,000 or 5,000. Do you remember, Steve? It was a 4,000 or 5,000% increase.
Yeah, 5,000.
5,000% increase. That's not a normal increase. If this was just society accepting things, we would not see an increase of those numbers.
Right. This is a social contagion.
And she also, you know, and she's a practicing, you know what I mean? She is a practicing physician. And she said that, you know, they don't do conversion therapy. They don't do that. What they do is they treat kids for whatever it is that they have going on, whether it's depression, it's anxiety, you know, and most of the children, if they go through a natural puberty, the number is very high. That kids that go through a natural puberty, this is relieved. So why would we ever stunt that? Why would puberty is natural? I mean, like, it's happening around the entire world. There are kids going through puberty as we sit here because it is a natural thing for them to go through. I know I got my period when I was 12 and it was like, you know, it was awkward and like weird. And like, I was thankful it had like, you know, it happened in gym class. So I had like a change, you know what I mean? I was like, yes, I was like, oh, I'm lucky at least this, you know what I mean? Because, you know, like nobody really like, you're kind of prepared for it, but it's only if your parents are really like, you know, actively like, you know, that they were given the skill set to know what to tell you, or if you have open communication with your, you know, with your family. And I feel like, you know, I raised my daughter differently than I was raised, you know, because I wanted to have more open communication and be close and make sure that like, you know, she knew that I was always there for her. And that was, you know, I mean, like I got pregnant with her and she was it. That is my life purpose, was to raise a human being that can be successful as an adult and give back into society and be a freaking kind, compassionate person. And I did a good job at being her mom and doing that. Like, I know I was successful in that. She shows that. You know what I mean? Like, I did my job. That was my job.
Well, good. You should be proud. I'm proud for you. I'm a mother. I have a 2-year-old. So I'm at the beginning of my job as a mom. And it's a scary thing to think about how my child's going to grow up in this world. I mean, it's horrifying to think about. But I want to take us back a moment ago when you talked about the author, which, by the way, you're going to have to DM me the book so I can go pick it up this weekend. But the Dr. Harvey Zucker, I think it's Harvey Zucker. So Dr. Zucker, for sure. He was exiled from his job of like 30 years because the trans rights activist said that he was committing conversion therapy because he was doing what that woman was saying in the book, taking time to diagnose the root of the issue causing the dysphoria for the child. And in certain circumstances, did he think that medical transition was necessary? In the very rare few, but the majority of them were outgrown or able to be addressed by figuring out the root cause of the problem. And that's the issue right now. It's they're handing out like pink slips, just handing out, here, you're trans, you're trans, you're trans, you're trans.
Kids are getting you. It's easier in the United States where we do not have universal health care. Okay. Now let's just take a second to think about this. Where we do not have universal health care for all, it is easier to get to a gender clinic and get hormones that will be covered, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you can't just go to a doctor otherwise, though. What does that tell you? They're making this the easy path. This is the solution. That's it. And they're not like, oh, well, like we should have therapy for kids that may feel this way. Let's help them figure out if that's what they do. If they do feel this way. No, you're set on an exact path where it is only about affirmation. And once they are on medication, once they take a medication, you know that they are a lifelong patient of medication, whether it is puberty blockers and they come off of it, they're still, because it messes up their natural system, they will have to be on hormones for the rest of their lives. They are a medical patient for life once they take anything, whether it's puberty blockers or cross-sex hormones. You mess your system up. It's messing it up. And if you take puberty blockers when you're not supposed to take it, now you can take them for precocious puberty, which means that like it's usually between before the ages of like 9 and 11. If puberty comes on too early, they will give sometimes kids puberty blockers for that reason. But because it's a time period where they're not supposed to have puberty, right? This is the reason that this is the big thing here, is that because it's not when they're supposed to be having puberty, the puberty blockers do what they're supposed to do. But if they take it when they are supposed to be going through natural puberty, their brain, because the Lupron and like the drugs, because they withhold the hormones for natural puberty, that child's brain is still developing, their body is still growing, it's just stopping those hormones. And so their brain is not developing at the same rate how it should be equally. It's actually stunting a part of it and allowing the other part to grow. So what is this doing to their brains? How is this damaging to them? And then if they take the cross-sex hormones, even if they come off of them and it messes up their entire system and all the receptors, then they have to be on those a lot of times for life. Because if you don't go through natural puberty, you're not going to make the testosterone. You're not going to make the estrogen and all the natural things that your body's supposed to make. And that right there, when I started like really diving into it and hearing that, I'm like, fuck, man. Because they make it sound like, oh, it's just a pause. It's just it's just a pause.
It's not. It's not just a pause.
Not. Our bodies are so much more complicated than that. So much more complicated.
So as you were sitting here talking to me about the brain not developing with the body, I couldn't help but to think about a correlation between all of these adults who or people who have been transitioning from younger ages and been on puberty blockers for years and stuff, how all of a sudden all of them are coming out as like autistic. And you can't help but to wonder if their developmental stunt, obviously, that is causing for this chaos and mania that we're seeing online and things like that. But that in and of itself is different than the older men who are transitioning. I think there's a fine line, right? And that's the difference we talk about transgenders and transsexuals, right? I feel like transsexuals are usually between 20 and 25 when they kind of figure out, okay, this is where I need to be. This is what I need to do. I need to be a trans woman or a trans man. Like there's a range, maybe even up to the early 30s, right? But anything before that, it's because you've been indoctrinated. You don't understand there's options for you to love and accept yourself. It's okay to be gay. It's okay to be a lesbian. You just because you're playing with boy toys or you're like a girl's color, like that does not inherently mean that you are one or the other. And you don't have to jump into this sexist stereotype of what it means to be a woman because you're a gay boy. It's okay. And it's so it is just so far from what the LGBT had or the LGBT fought for originally to be able to have love and acceptance of. Butch girls, butch lesbians, right? Like I was in high school with them, around them, like cool, you do your thing, whatever, right? But now it's like, no, that's a man, that's a trans man. No, it's not. That's a woman. You're not gonna lie to me. She's got a hoo-ha.
And you know what? And you know what? It's crazy is that so natural instincts allow us, especially women, to identify. I know. I put it there for a second. They allow us to identify a male. And why is that? Why are women able to identify a male, even if a male has had feminization surgeries and has transition? Why is that?
Shouldn't be.
Because it's primal. It's primal because males are they can kill 95% of women with their bare hands. It is a primal instinct for us to be able to identify a male or a female. How, or else people would be completely confused in the mating process for like a long time. They wouldn't know what they were doing. Out. It actually goes back to being it's a primal instinct. That's why we can do that. And that's why sometimes we might even if we're trying to be respectful, we might misgender somebody because it is a natural instinct. Like our brains just naturally do that. But yeah, I know you want to comment on this. RIP George said, this sounds like a straw man. No one is getting surgeries prior to 18. Well, do you want to take this?
George, welcome. Thank you for joining us on the podcast tonight. Listen, I think you're a little bit late. If you look up Dr. Blair Peters from Washington State, there's a very, very viral clip of him going around right now, and in which he kind of chuckles and talks about how these virgin boys, 17, 18, 17, and he kind of goes, shakes his head a little bit, who've never had sex, who've never even masturbated, are having surgery, and they've been on puberty blockers for several years. So actually the skin that they need has not developed properly, which causes a lot of issues for the vaginoplasties that he himself does perform on minors. Isn't that fun? It's so fun. Research is great.
There's a really, really public person, Jazz Jennings, who had the surgery at 17 years old. If you look up it's a TLC series. It's been on, I don't know, I think 8 years or something. I personally wasn't watching it, but I'm starting to watch some other people that have done reactions to it. Jazz Jennings was on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and had 4 vaginal surgeries, vaginoplasties, meaning, and there wasn't enough skin because Jazz did not go through natural male puberty, so they had to do all kinds of surgeries. And yeah, you can look it up. It's on national television. It's happening. So to deny that is really seriously.
I'm not sure why who pays for it. Like George said, who pays for it?
For
why-
what? The surgeries?
for these surgeries and things. Like ultimately, the people who pay for it the most are the ones going through the surgeries, especially if they have bad surgeries, which seems to be really, really common as well.
68% complication rate.
68% complication rate.
That's
okay.
high.
So ultimately,
Yeah.
we all pay for it collectively because everything is going to increase, the insurance and everything behind it, because it's such a difficult thing and so on and so forth. You know, it's a for-profit thing. That's what they do. They're trying to make money off of it. And all you have to do is get the kids to say, sure, get the boys to say I'm a girl and get the girls to say I'm a boy as young as possible and get them started on them drugs. And they got forever patients.
Yeah.
Forever. And they're irretrievably changed from that moment. So
You're right.
That is the issue that I have with this whole thing is just a lack of care or repercussion for the people, helping this happen.
It's heartbreaking
to people over and over.
It's heartbreaking to the kid.
I will answer George because George is asking this again. Who's paying for it? Okay, George. So just a couple fun facts about it. So insurance covers gender affirming care, just like, with pregnancies and stuff, there's a level of it that's covered by insurance. But did you know that under gender affirming care, the very first facial feminization surgery is 100% covered for a trans person? There's no 100% covered cosmetic surgery for women.
Wow.
But then you have the other cases in which, did you know that? So in other cases, so when you have multiple surgeries and everything, right? You're working with your insurance, they'll cover part of it, but majority is on you. Like you have your deductible just like you would any other situation, right? But in the UK, it is now considered spousal abuse if you refuse to pay for gender affirming care, medical care for your spouse. So, women who've spent 30 years developing a savings for retirement are having to fork over the money that they worked for their husbands to get breasts and feminize themselves. And it's considered spousal abuse for the woman to say, we should not be using our money in this manner. So there is a level of financial abuse and neglect because of it. And it shouldn't be on the onus of the spouse or the family, or the parents should not be responsible to pay for medical care, especially if they don't want their child to be medically transitioned. If they're standing against it to protect their child, it should not occur and it shouldn't happen. So the victims of medical transition are close family members being held responsible for those, parents and spouses.
Yeah. In the U.S., George, because he's like, so in the U.S. only the privileged get it. No, that's not necessarily true because there's plenty of GoFundMe's and there's plenty of
you look at Give, Send, Go or GoFundMe
trying to further this with lots of very rich people's money. There's no shortage of funds if you want to be a trans kid. They'll figure out how to do it.
There are people that are funding these kinds of surgeries. And actually it's really interesting though, like the majority of the kids that are going through this are white middle class, and the autism rate is like 40%, I think. So like there's something happening when it's a majority of a certain, group of people, and there's a demographic that's really being like, targeted in this. And you can go in a country where we don't have care for all, but you can go and you can have this kind of care, and insurances are having to provide this care, and you're not actually getting a functioning. If you have they're cutting off the breasts of young girls. I know several detransitioners. I know several of them who have had, they've had their breasts removed, and it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking that they were before they were 18. They were younger than 18, and they're having radical double mastectomies. Like, that is not something that I am on the side of. I'm not on the side of that. I'm not on the side of kids having healthy tissue and going under the knife and all the risks. I've had surgeries. I know like what risks I was under. I've had two back surgeries, and you know, it was scary. It was really scary to go in and to know that like I might not come back out and I might leave my daughter behind. And there has been kids that have had these surgeries and they have died on the operating table. Is that a risk that is worth it? Over and when they're not getting therapy or counseling? Yeah. I don't think the risk is improving their lives. I really don't. Especially when there's detransitioners. If there's one detransitioner, then we should look at it. There are thousands of them. I know that Prisha, she's on Twitter, and she goes around and she actually testifies against transition care because she was transitioned. She had her healthy breasts removed at 17. And you know what happened to her because she took the testosterone? She can't even use tampons to be graphic. She can't have sex to be graphic because there's major complications that happen with a woman having testosterone in those levels because you're taking like high doses of it. It's not a normal amount. You're flushing your body. You're overly having to take them because you're overly driving it. So these young people are taking like 4 to 5 times the amounts, sometimes even higher than that. And it gives them vaginal atrophy and basically tearing, bleeding, all of these issues. They can't get things like a estrogen cream that would help them now. And they basically, you know what I mean? Like there are major complications and major things that are happening to these kids and nobody's talking about these things. And it's heartbreaking. And it's really like, you know, they're not fun things to talk about. They're not like, oh yeah, like, you know, rainbows and freaking butterflies here. You know, like this is, it is, oh.
I knew about the problems for men with their vaginoplasties and stuff. I didn't know that young girls who went on that level of tea were having the same thing happen in their vaginal canal with collapses and stuff. I mean, that's horrifying. That is horrifying.
Like
this is not normal. No woman should be experiencing that, especially in her young womanhood in her 20s. We're supposed to be, you know, going to college and getting a new job or starting our families and living the lives that we want to live, right? And doing so. And you don't know when you're 15 if you want to have kids. You could be 25 and decide kids aren't for me or they are everything that I could possibly want. And I mean, I hadn't even considered that aspect for the detransitioners. I've considered the aspect of breastfeeding. These women will never be able to breastfeed their infants. And I was the first woman in 3 generations of women who breastfed in my family. And my female cousins, one just had her first child. So the second of this generation of children. I was the first to have the newest generation. I digress. I set precedents, and she is breastfeeding as well. And you know, the older women in the generations are like, "Ooh, yeah, taboo," but we're like, no, this is like the most natural and bonding experience that you can have. Not every woman is able to do this, but we are, and we want to carry this tradition with our child and to give our child all of the nutrients that they're meant to get from us, their mothers. And what they do for these detransitioners is they make these mothers reliant upon giving formula to their children. There was a formula shortage 2 years ago. 2 years ago, formula went out. It was like killing babies because there was something bad in it. And all of these mothers were just on all of the different Facebook groups and everything trying to find, does anybody have this one formula? Can you check to make sure it doesn't have the bad serial numbers on it? And I happened to have samples. I had like 10 samples and I think it was, my son was like 7 months at this point. And I'm like, oh my God, they're probably expired. They weren't. And I was lucky enough to be able to find that none of the ones I had that serial number. I gave all of them away within like 15 minutes of figuring out I could. And it's horrifying to think these women are going to rely on it.
Okay, so for me, when it comes to breastfeeding, like the reason it hits me so hard is okay. When I got pregnant with my daughter, I needed the second back surgery. I have a spinal fusion in my lower back on L5S1. I have 4 screws and 3 metal rods that hold my lower back together. If I didn't have that surgery that I needed for 7 years and I wasn't able to get because I was with an abusive husband, then I wouldn't be walking. Okay. Like it was bad. It was absolutely serious. I had one surgery in 2001. I was 21 years old when I was in a car accident. And I'm sorry. I had my first surgery in 2002 because it was October of 2001 when I was in the car accident. We were rear-ended. I was a passenger. It was not my fault. And it changed my entire life forever. Now, I needed to have a second back surgery. I had the worst like sciatica pain. I have permanent nerve damage in my legs. There's still numb spots on my legs. All these years later, I had that surgery in 2009, the second back surgery.
Wow.
I had my daughter in 2003. But you know what? I went through my entire pregnancy with my daughter with my discs being bone to bone. Do you know how painful it is when all of your entire disc is herniated and on the nerves? The amount of nerve pain and damage that I went through my entire pregnancy like that and 2.5 years of breastfeeding without taking a damn thing. For my daughter, that is the sacrifice that I did because I wanted her to have the best chance, because I wanted the best thing that I could possibly do for her. Because when I became pregnant with her, that was my job. I went through my entire pregnancy and gave birth with back labor with my back like that. And I see these men on all these hormones saying that they're breastfeeding children, and it's not true. And it hits home really hard because of that, because I went through so much to give my daughter. I didn't take any medications. I couldn't take medications and breastfeed her. If I had to take medications, then I would have had to stop. And I let her determine how long I breastfed. You know what I mean? Like that was like, it was the best thing that I could ever do to her and for her. And you know, like she, knock on wood, like she doesn't get sick like that. You know what I mean? Like she was a really healthy kid. We were in the doctor's office a lot, you know, like it didn't happen. I gave her that best start. And that's what you do as a parent. You do that for your kid. It's not even about like sacrifice. It's not even about being sacrificial at the time. It's just, that's what you do.
You don't think about it. Yeah. You don't think about it.
But the thing about to have these males doing this, it's like
it's to affirm a fetish. I mean, look at the guy who wants to make he calls it tranny milk. That's what he calls it. He says, if anybody wants tranny milk, I'll be donating it to any mother who needs it. He doesn't even have a baby. He does not have a baby. It is a fetish. That is not a gynephiliac, ladies and gentlemen. You do. There is no reason. Women's breasts produce milk that changes based on when the saliva hits the nip. When the saliva of the baby hits the nip, a female's body starts to actually make the milk change based on what is coming through the pores and like there's a communication. You know, they're in tandem. The baby's body communicates with the mom's body
too. They heal us. Like, that's why women that have had pregnancies, they've actually like, they don't have the same, like, you know, that's how I was able to get
your body
my
changes.
Pregnancy. Your body adjusts to that baby, and the baby gives you it's an amazing, our bodies are an amazing system when you really look at the whole picture of everything that our bodies do. I mean, like I always say, like it's like my superpower. Not only was I able to grow my daughter in my belly, I made the milk to feed her. Like I'm like, man, that is just an amazing thing that I was able to do. Like there's nothing that can, if you're not a parent or you're not a mom, like I don't know how it is to be a father, but like I know how it is to be a mom, and that experience is something that, like, I mean, it's the most overwhelming love for a human that you will ever have in your life. Like it is, like I can't even begin to like express how amazing it is.
I think the way that I would say it is becoming a parent. So like, I can't speak on behalf of men. I know that it's different for men, but it's almost similar in a way. But for me as a woman, and thinking about other women who have become mothers, it is such a shared but unique experience that it's almost indescribable what it's like the moment you give birth and you first breastfeed, or you bottle feed if that's what you choose to do. When you have that child and you hold your child in your arms, your world is forever changed. It just is.
It is. It's amazing. Like, and my daughter's gonna be 20 years old, and I still think about it like that, and I'm just like, it's very emotional for me. It's like, I was told I would probably never have kids. So like when I was able to have my daughter, like it was like, oh my gosh, like it was an amazing thing. And I had like literally after her, I had double digits of miscarriages trying to have kids, like, double numbers. Like I'm not talking just a couple, like and so I always call her like my miracle baby. I'm so like amazed that, like I was able to have her and that, she's healthy, and, like I'm forever grateful for that. And no amount of money could buy me that. Nothing could buy me that. No one could make that, recreate that for me. It's just something that it was a gift for me in my life. You know what I mean? Like that is something that is super special to me that no one can ever take away from me. But and these people and these men doing this doesn't threaten me, but it does threaten the life of those babies, because those hormones, like when you were pregnant or breastfeeding,
it's
what
an
did they tell you? What did they tell you about
things?
You can't eat things.
No medication.
Medication.
Yeah,
like
nothing.
Because even if you like eat like a lot of something like a lot of garlic or onion or something, you can smell that through the breast milk. You can smell it. Like,
are you making spaghetti, baby? They're delicious.
And I've tasted other breast milk. I don't know if you have had that experience, but I've tasted other breast milk. I know.
I have not experienced that. No. I have a friend who grew up in Syria, like, in the 90s, right? There was like a little bit of a peaceful period or whatever. And her Muslim family had actually like Catholic neighbors, and her mother breastfed the little girl next door. Like her
she was Syrian a wet nurse.
Muslim mother breastfed the little girl. Yeah. So like, it's actually been a very normal thing for breastfeeding mothers to feed other infants if their supply was able to do so, and wet nurses throughout history kind of been abused in certain situations, but that's besides the point. It is possible. Now, the difference between women,
it happens naturally.
These are women who have had a child. Their body has produced the hormones to create the breast milk. And
that happens during puberty, natural puberty.
This is not manufactured and man-made secretion that creates some kind of whatever liquid. I refuse to call it breast milk because it is not. There's been a few things that bother me. The trans man who said that he can't wait in 10 years. He volunteers to be the first, trans woman, the first a trans woman to receive a uterus and have an abortion. That is disgusting and vile. Whether or not you believe in pro-life or pro-choice, for this transgender woman to actually go on the internet and say, I can't wait to be able to have the first trans abortion, that's disgusting. That only validates our opinion that all of the shit that they're doing, and excuse my French here, all of the shit that they're doing with the
say whatever you want.
They want to affirm themselves. And literally, I was watching your video about the milk thing earlier. You were talking about, I forget what his name is, the cow OnlyFans
cow mode.
Yeah, whatever.
I think it's Naomi. Is it
Naomi? You were talking about Naomi. I was watching that video earlier. So even Naomi, is talking about how affirming it is to create breast milk, as they say. It's not. It's chest milk, and it's not real breast milk. And you admit it. You're only doing it to affirm. And apparently, as you said, They're doing it on their OnlyFans. Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
I mean, when they're doing it in that way, you oh my gosh, like
It
it's
only proves it. It only proves it.
So while we're on this subject, just because like it is a really funny story about something that happened with me. Okay. Steve knows, he knows what I'm gonna talk about. You guys, some of you guys that have been here before, we might have heard this. So when my dog was a puppy and in his mom's, belly, and I was taking care of him and his mama dog, it was my friend's dog. And his mom's name is Dixie Normus. Yep. Because it was his mom was named because the guy apparently that named her that was like, yeah, no one's ever gonna say that my dick's enormous, so I'm gonna name my dog Dixie Normus. So you can just imagine the vet cards that came in the mail. You know what I mean? Like it cracked us up every time. So yeah, his mama dog is called Dixie Normus, and his dad's dog is Milo. And, I was there through the whole thing with them. And so I actually started having issues where I started lactating out of the blue. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh. And so I went to the doctor like, whoa, my God, something's wrong. You know what I mean? Like, what is going on? And
my boobies is leaking.
Yeah, it was only one of them. Yeah. It was like one. But like, it was the pregnancy of his dog mom. It was that triggered that maternal like instinct in me that my body naturally decided to start to produce. Like I actually had to have it tested and make sure, that I was okay.
There wasn't anything going on.
Yeah. But they were like, were you around any pregnant women? Because it can happen. Around pregnant
grandmothers. There's like grandmothers in Africa and South Africa that breastfeed their grandchildren. I mean, it's actually more natural. It's I think been suppressed over generations and generations because of, I don't know, colonialism, whatever you want to call it.
I'm not really sure why women stop breastfeeding, because my mom breastfed and my grandmother breastfed. Like this is generations of women in my family that breastfed.
My mother didn't. My grandmother didn't. My grandmother said to my mother, I thought that died in the Middle Ages. And I'm like, no. But okay. I don't know if her mother breastfed her. Her mother died when she was young. And I don't know if her grandmother breastfed her. They were from Ireland and Italy. So I don't know. Well, actually, my great grandmother was Italy. My great grandfather was Ireland. So I don't know what they did there. But I just know that 2 generations before me, at least probably 3, did not breastfeed. I mean, we're talking 1940s. So post-war formula, all the things. I wonder too, if maybe back in like the 40s and stuff, when they started really pushing formula on American society, right? Pre-50s, if there isn't a correlation between like the Great Depression and women not being able to produce a supply because people weren't able to eat like they needed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know that like there's companies like that make most of the formula, like Nestle is a big one. They actually introduced formula to African countries and then they took it away. Like they introduced it so women's like milk like dried up because and oh my gosh, what a yeah. And then they took it away, and then so babies were like like dying and stuff like that. Like, so yeah, there's it's capitalism that a lot of it is the problem. You know what I mean? There are evil people in this world that are doing things, that have done things. And like when look, just always follow the money with it. You know what I mean? Like I've done shows with Vanderbilt and like showed how they're like bragging about how much they make for a trans person and how much they make on a surgery and how much they make for hormones. And, I've covered all of this.
Profit driven, just like always. Snorky just said, doctors are paid by the dairy industry to have everybody on a bottle as a baby. You know what I mean? That's like, it's the same thing. And then introduced the new infant formula where they synthesized it and made it better, and that's what everybody has now.
Think about this. We're the only animals that drink another animal's milk.
But like Caucasian people and African American people have developed the enzyme in their stomach to handle the lactose that we otherwise couldn't. We shouldn't be able to chow down on ice cream and pizza and stuff like that like we do as Americans. It's crazy. We eat so much like milk sugar that it's, you know, it's insane.
It's just really, you know,
Really
I mean,
wild.
like it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to think about. Like,
I just want to say it started in Europe. Okay, it's something that
Yep.
came over here with us. Now there's some. Have you heard about the conspiracy about the cheese caves?
Cheese cave.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I've heard this.
No,
Ew.
no.
Do
So
tell.
I'm going to take you down a rabbit hole you'll probably research later. So back in the 70s, there was basically where the government subsidized farms and like dairy farmers. You know why there was such a push with like the melted cheese fondue and everything? Because when they subsidized the dairy farms, they started overproducing cheeses and milk and all that stuff. And so they were mass producing it, selling it really cheap. But because they were making so much, well, they needed to do something with it. So there's literal caves like in the middle of the US. I don't know if it's Iowa or Illinois or something with an I, okay? But you can look this shit up. And there's literal caves that are
Help us out,
government issued
chat.
caves
Tell us.
where they
Tell
are
us.
stuffing. They're literally like hoarding 40, 50-year-old fucking cheese now because they mass
Like,
produced
to
it and they couldn't put it
To
out.
current day.
Yeah.
To current day.
Like to current day. Still putting cheese in caves in the middle of the United States. I don't know about you, but I'll
While
probably go
people
look
are
for that when the
starving?
apocalypse happens. Yes.
While people
While
are starving.
Cheese.
While people are starving. Yeah, they're like, you can look up the cheese caves conspiracy and it's going to take you on this whole rabbit hole.
Oh, I love
And
that.
then, you know, with the government thing.
Steve's like, I'm finding them caves. You know,
You-
I
so-
do love the queso. You know what I mean?
and you know what? Another thing that's really crazy about cheese is that it has the same effect and receptors in our brain as cocaine does. So think about that.
Let's
We're
go.
getting high when we're having cheese.
Party.
I love cheese, man.
I
I
know,
don't really
that's-
know too many people.
I got a cheese Jones. Where are those caves, man?
I know, right?
Brother up. I just need a little
Planning the
bit.
next
Come on.
family vacation.
I know, right?
Cheese
We're going to
caves.
cheese
Come
caves.
on, man. I just need a
Fuck
little
looking
bit.
for diamonds, bitch. We're going to get cheese.
Yeah. We're looking for cheese. I found all these stupid crystals and gold.
I know, right? Oh my god, that's so funny. Cheese caves.
Mhm.
Oh my
I know,
god.
I
it's
figured they'd
funny,
be
but
in-
it's also kind of horrifying.
I figured
It
they'd be.
is.
I figured
It's-
they'd be in like Minnesota or Wisconsin or something. You know, some like dank ass cheese caves. or whatever.
If we don't
I don't
laugh at
know.
it though, then we're gonna cry. So like, you know, sometimes I just
Here's
have to
something
laugh.
funny. There was a TikTok of a farmer who was talking about how it cost him about $35,000 to buy all of the seeds that he needed for his year of farming on 65 acres, right? He has to spend this much money on seeds every year because the seeds are specifically synthesized and created by the government, and they do not produce seeds. The vegetables that he grows do not produce seeds. He has to buy them from the government. So farmers aren't able to be self-sustainable at
Yep.
a mass level. They have to rely upon buying seeds issued by the federal government. So when you get like corn or something, or maybe like bell peppers, and you go to grow those seeds, if they're not from like a local farm or organic, and they're like a
Yep.
mass-produced company, and you wonder, why the hell is this not sprouting? I've been watering it. It's in sunlight. Everything's fine. It's because they're not intended to actually grow, and they were created in such a way
Yep.
to not be self-sustaining.
They are made to be like that. Yeah, absolutely. We've tried it. You know what I mean? Like there are certain things that you can grow from, like, you know, the actual plants as well. Like we have squash that we planted, and zucchini, and we're growing peppers and tomatoes
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Monsanto completely fucking boned everybody with their GMO seeds to start with. You know,
Yep, you want
30 years
heirloom
ago.
seeds. Heirloom
seeds, and they also what they did was they patented a life. Basically, they're just like, here, this tree, this thing, this organism, we're gonna own the patent on this. And that's what they
Yeah.
did. They made it possible to patent life. And I knew we were heading downhill from there because when was that? Like probably 2002 or something.
I don't know. We're being
It was-
poisoned in our air, our
Yeah.
food, our water, our medicine, our schools and education. I mean,
Media.
it's everywhere.
Oh,
We are
God.
being poisoned in every aspect of our
Actively.
lives. And I feel like this is, I mean, when kids are being put on these hormones and and then it's sterilizing them, because what is Lupron? Can we talk about that for like just 1 second? What is Lupron? Who do they use it for? Lupron
They use it for
stops
rapists.
puberty. Yeah, they use it for people to medically castrate them. They use it for cancer, for men. Oh my God, what the fuck is it called? What
They
cancer
use it for
is it?
women.
They use it for women, for endometriosis, and
Yep.
there's all kinds of lawsuits. There's been I cover Lupron, and like there's been lawsuits for years. The FDA has been like just like letting this stuff, and they're using it for kids off label. It is not approved for what they're using it for.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? That means that they haven't done studies on it. There's no long-term studies. So guess what? They're doing the studies right now. Other countries that are
Refuse.
socialist countries have stopped these treatments. Anyone want to look at Tavistock? They shut it down. There's thousands of people that are suing in the UK.
Yeah. It's horrifying. It's horrifying to see that they're using all of these drugs off label, because you're right. We are literally witnessing a mass experiment right now. When people say, "Oh, there's studies, this is totally fine, we know what's going to happen," that's a lie. We have not spent more first of all, for a successful study, actually, it needs to be at least a 20-year study. You're looking at a lifetime. Beyond that, a 30-year study. We need to understand the ramifications of what happens. Not only are we concerned about the livelihood of the people who are transitioning at such a young age, but also if these people detransition and have children, what kind of defects will those children have due to the hormone imbalance in the biological parent, if even at all possible, right? Unfortunately for women like Prisha, though, they would probably, if able to have a pregnancy, would only be able to have a cesarean. I mean, in order to not die.
Yeah,
And
she's
that's just the
already
reality.
having complications, in general. So like they don't even know if they can even have a pregnancy, because we and like let's rewind this even back further. Let's remind people that our sex is not assigned at birth. My sex, what happened when I was conceived. Because like if you ever looked into natural like family planning, like I did this a lot when I was trying to get pregnant and stuff like that. There's natural family planning. So a woman has ovulation, which only lasts a few days a month, which happens 2 weeks from the start of her last period, not 2 weeks after the end date. It's 2 weeks from the start of the last period. Your temperature changes in your body. You can actually change your temperature. You can check your temperature every day and find out when you are ovulating. And when you're ovulating, depending on if it's a couple days before ovulation or on ovulation, depends on whether you end up with typically, you can't always guarantee it, but whether or not you are going to have more likely to have a boy or you're likely to have a girl. If it's if it's 3 days before ovulation, then usually you could, a male will happen. And if it's right on ovulation, usually you have a female. That's when it's determined. That's when it's determined.
No idea that you could get that specific about male to female, like timing it in the ovulation.
Yep. Yep. Some women, a lot of women that I know, I was in a group called Crunchy Crew because crunchy like as in granola, and papoose. We wore our babies with Maya wraps or whatever, or papooses, and we co-slept, and we were very attached parenting. You know what I mean? Like my friends, like we all breastfed, and we did breastfeeding, like breast-ins, what we call them, like places that would give us a hard time about breastfeeding. Oh no, we would all go there with our babies and freaking sit there and breastfeed, and that was our form of protest.
Hell yeah.
So this is when I'm talking about this stuff, it's because I actually have the personal experience, the lived experience of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it's not like 100% predictable that you'll have, you know what I mean, a girl or a boy, depending on that. But if you know your cycle, you can be a little bit more of you can try to aim
like intentional.
Yeah, you can try to have either a male or a female, and it depends on when the conception happens. So when a doctor catches the baby, because honestly, it's not the doctor who's delivering the baby. That doctor is not pushing that baby out. I'm sorry to tell people, but the woman, unless it's a C-section, that's different. I had natural birth. I delivered my baby. The doctor was just there to catch the baby, and they saw her and decided to say, "Oh, look at that. She has female genitalia. So that's a female." I'm observing that is what your baby is. The doctor doesn't give me a magic wand and say, "Okay, do you want a boy or a girl?" That doesn't happen.
I just say it was witnessed, you know what I mean? Observed or witnessed. There's no changing what kind of that baby is what that baby is. If the sonogram's wrong, whatever, right? But when a baby comes out, it's either one or the other, and occasionally intersex. And
I have two friends who are intersex, and I've done interviews with Emmeline Dowd on my channel, and it's really, really interesting because if you look at the David Reimer case, she was actually raised as a male, but was born intersex and did not know that she was intersex until there was complications when she was a teenager. And that's when she found out that her parents and the doctor decided to raise her as a boy. So it's a really interesting interview. It's really, when I say I've dived into these subjects, I've talked to the people. I talked to transsexuals. I talked to transgender people. I talked to intersex people. I talked to people about this stuff because I want to know from everybody's perspective. Anybody that will talk to me
willing
about
to have a conversation. Yeah. I'm the same way. It pisses a lot of feminists off because I'm willing to have conversations and I like civil discourse. I like to be able to have conversations. At the end of the day, I'm not going to agree with everybody on how we take approaches and handle things. But for me, if you stand against gender ideology, converting children, committing conversion therapy on little gay and lesbian kids, and even some of these straight kids are being wrapped up in this too because of the social contagion aspect, especially young girls are being extremely just manipulated by this.
Are through the roof. The girls are through the roof. It is absolutely statistically. It is. I wish I knew someone that did statistical analysis because it is not. I'm not a mathematician.
It's not normal.
I'm not a statistician.
It's the same thing as anorexia. There's an interview of a woman who talks about this. She said it's the same as it was with anorexia in the earlier 2000s that went to Japan, went into Asia. They saw this westernized fad of women who they saw this specific Western style woman and the eating disorder and anorexia just took off in Asia and just became a social phenomenon, and girls were dying because of it. Right.
Yeah.
And with it now, with gender ideology, I mean, the problem is it's impacting all of us, men, women, but my big concern is the children. And that's my first part of my fight. And that's why I'm exposing the cult, because if you can get people to realize that this is nefarious, it's an ideology that is actually indoctrinating children, telling them that they're not okay in their bodies, that they need to kill themselves if they don't transition, and that they're being mutilated, double mastectomies, inversion of the penis, their puberty is being blocked. you start to realize, like, wake up. Why are you performing like borderline eugenics on children? Why are you culling an entire generation of children and preventing them from being able to have a family line? Okay. Let's not even talk about messing with the female statistics and demographics, right? By registering sex offenders who are men as female. Okay. We won't even get into that. Let's just focus on the children. And if you can start to pique people by talking about the children, they'll start to lay all the other pieces together. And I'm willing to work with anybody who's willing to say there should be no children who are being transitioned. If you're against transitioning children, that's great. That's a first step. But I think, honestly, what I have found the most contentious thing is the bathrooms. I've transsexuals I know I talk to regularly, friends with, spaces, locker rooms, wouldn't use them. They say, nope, don't want to use them. Trans women are men, don't want to be in your domestic violence shelter, don't want to be in your prisons. Like, this is not acceptable. But when it comes to bathrooms, that is where we completely cannot. That's going to be like the last thing that people actually let to get resolved.
I know. I'm really like, I am having a really hard time with the bathroom issue. The reason why that people have the biggest issue with it, right, is that we cannot physically see somebody's intention. We cannot physically see if they have the intention of going in there and just using the bathroom like a normal human, or if they have the intention of going in there and exposing themselves or hurting somebody. That's the problem I have, is that you cannot see this intention. And it's like, I don't want to exclude people that just want to go in there and, you know what I mean, use the bathroom. I've gone in bathroom with my transsexual friends. We've gone out to the club. You know what I mean? We've done things. We go in the same bathroom because I've had male to female transsexual friends, and I have female to male transsexual friends. And I'm saying transsexual as opposed to transgender because these people went through counseling and have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. And all they did was transition to live the life of the opposite gender, because but they understand that their biology doesn't change. You can't change down to your molecules. Like, everything about there's a lot. We are the same species, right? Like, we are all the same species, but there are huge differences between males and females. If a male goes to the doctor and says, I can't get pregnant, the doctor's going to go, okay, something's wrong. Like, something's wrong up here. If a woman says it, then they're going to say, okay, well, like, let's figure out why it's not working then. Because there's a difference, because we're meant to carry the children. They are not meant to carry children. If you go to a doctor and, you have your ID that says you're female and you're not really a female, you're going to have different markers with your blood, with your heart, with your lungs, with organ transplants, with the medicines that they can use. Your EKG is going to be different. Your lung capacity is different. I mean, it's down to every molecule, because as a male, their body was always programmed to receive the male hormones. Right. And the female was always programmed to receive the female hormone. And our bodies are such machines that they do this naturally. And for the majority of us, unless something disrupts our system and disrupts the pathways that are naturally supposed to happen, then that's what happens. Like, you know what I mean? If somebody is healthy and there's not an outside source, there's not something wrong, then their body is going to naturally do all the things. Yeah, 100%. Our bodies are amazing.
Look, just stop fucking with nature. Just stop fucking with nature. If there is something if there is a defect that has occurred that can be corrected at birth, like an actual defect, like the lips and stuff like that. These are things that we go in because it is a kindness to correct those things. But to tell a child that they are in the wrong body is not a kindness. And I like to sit there and say, sometimes a cruelty can be a kindness. There is a difference between being honest about the truth of a situation and actually being completely cruel and telling a child that they should not exist as they are.
I know it's a really cruel reality to tell children, especially autistic children, that they can change their gender, because you can't. We don't have that technology. We're not doing brain transplants. Like, you would literally have to change everything. You wouldn't be the same person if you could change sex. You would not be the person that you are. You would literally be dead and not be the same person. Like, it's not a possibility. What did Gray Walker say here? The main difference between men and women's bathrooms is plumbing. Therefore, the individual's plumbing should be the determining factor which bathrooms they use. It is an innie or an outie. And so, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think about that? Do you think that, like, so I've had an interview where Buck Angel has come on the show, and Buck uses the men's room because Buck walks at, even though Buck says I am a biological female, I present as a male. And I use the men's
life
bathroom
as a woman.
walks
through life as a man, but is a biological woman. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's cosmetic surgery. It's not changing.
This is where
your
the contentiousness gets. Yeah. Yeah. This is where the contentiousness gets, though. Right. Like,
and I have a hard time with this too.
So there are transsexual women who won't get their haters cut off.
Yeah, they won't get bottom surgery. Yeah.
Because they won't have SRS, because of the fact that it's dangerous, that they recognize that it is a wound. They tuck it away and they hide it and they act like it's not there. Right. And they function and look like they are, passing, and they function in society as a woman would. Right. And this is something that they won't do because there's recognizing that you have a mental illness. From what I've understand and what I've been told, there's recognizing you have a mental illness, recognizing that you want to live this way, but then there's also a fine line between self-mutilation. And while they're doing all of these other things to achieve that aesthetic, they consider that a mutilation. And that's where the issue is, right? Well, we can sit here and say, yeah, you passed, you get into the bathroom, but self-ID is allowing anybody to get in regardless. So even if we said any versus outie, then transsexual women like Blair White would not be permitted into the female bathroom because they didn't have the surgery, right?
So what do we do there?
So listen, people can call me a segregationist all you want. Women had to fight for the right to have spaces in society equal to men.
To even have bathrooms at all.
Right. And it took decades for it to be everywhere. Yeah, fine. It did. But it happened. It was a crawl, but it happened. And so why not do that for trans people? I don't think trans people are going anywhere. There are people here who say that there shouldn't be any trends at all. We should stop doing it completely. That's fine. But what are you going to do about the hundreds of thousands of trans people that do exist currently in society globally, right? How are they supposed to be going about things? And first, we need to get rid of self-ID. If we can get rid of self-ID, we can start to have the other harder conversations and figure out all of the nuances. What needs to be done is there needs to be safeguarding around what it means to be trans. And that is a big conversation. That is a big marker. Radical feminists can't do it for them. They need to start doing it themselves. But it gets to the point where if you're not willing to take responsibility for what you've allowed in our space, we are going to be the ones who are going to put in the petitions to protect our space. Just because you're not willing to fight for your own doesn't mean that we can't fight for our.
So basically, we will have to exclude people if they don't fight for their own space. We will have to exclude them to protect our own same-sex spaces, is what you're saying.
And it's a shitty way to put it, but that's
not
the only
really
thing
us trying to be exclusionary. It's just us saying that, like, hey, we can't be. You know what I mean? Like,
we can't just let we cannot allow a tsunami of nefariousness come in by just opening the floodgate, essentially, is what is happening here, and we have to shut it down. So,
and it's really hard. It's a really hard place to be, because I have transsexual friends that, like, I wouldn't even care if they were in the bathroom. And another thing is about the bathroom is that women, we deal with, like, female issues that are not the same as male issues. We've always been considered the weaker sex, right? We're not typically as strong as the men. They can kill 95% of men can kill us with their bare hands. Most women with their bare hands. Okay. We are they are like a natural predatory threat to women. You know what I mean? Like that's just evolution. That is how that is how nature evolved, right? And so that's why we're able to instinctively identify males the way that we are, the way that we see them so quickly is that's why we have and it's a natural instinct that we are able to identify males. So we have to think about this. We have to think about like is it being exclusionary or is it just protecting us? You know what I mean? Because it's more than just going in there to pee. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is just going in there to pee. But do you know, like, okay, think about the stereotype of like all the women getting up from the table and going to the bathroom together. Why is that? Why do women do that?
Because you're always safer in numbers than you are
safer
alone.
In numbers. We go there to have conversations that are exclusionary of male beings.
Right.
If we need to get away, if we're like out at a club and we need to get away from like a creepy guy, what do? We go, a lot of times we go to the bathroom. We go and we can talk to each other. We can, you know what I mean? We it's a bonding experience too at times, you know, and we're different. We're different in that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there aren't trans women that feel that way too, but there are people that are passing under the radar and saying, well, I'm a transgender person, so I get to use that too. And that's what the self-ID comes in. And that's where
that's the floodgate. They're taking advantage of it. Yeah, they're using trans as a guise.
And they've ruined it for the transsexuals. The transgenders that have done this, the autogophilias, they have ruined it for the transsexual people that just want to go in and do like what we do in the bathroom. And I'm not just talking about a bathroom. Like sometimes we change in there. Sometimes we're like, you know, ripping open a pad. You know what I mean? Like that makes noise. And like I personally know young girls, like moms that I've talked to, like, cause I talk to parents, like, you know, even though my daughter's not in school in grade school and stuff anymore, I still talk to parents like in my neighborhood, my neighbor, I'm checking in on her. Like, hey, is any of this happening in the school? Can you keep an eye out for me? I would like to know if it's happening. I had one mom tell me that she pulled her daughter out of high school because they were letting boys go in that were identifying as female now, go in there. And she didn't feel comfortable. And it was she just didn't feel comfortable. This is the way that society has been structured. We never had it wasn't ever like we always had unisex bathrooms. That was never the case. It was always based upon gender, right?
I remember in high school a few times some couples who got caught having sex in the boys' bathroom or the girls' bathroom. We were never permitted to be in the opposite sex bathroom because they're, you know, it's just teenagers are going to do what they're going to do. Right. But also there are some cases where people are going to do things to other people that they don't want to do. And why have the additional risk? Right. It's not acceptable.
Great Walker said, why don't men have their own spaces? Male gyms, for instance, have been forced to allow women, but the reverse is rare. Well, they shouldn't do that either. Men should be able to have their spaces too. And, you know, we always stand up for that here at, you know, on this channel. We say men should be able to have their men's spaces if they want to, you know what I mean? Like they should be able to have their male only gym if they want to have a male only gym. Why shouldn't they be allowed to? Like, you know, if females want to have their own, they had like the Curves gym or whatever. I think it was only for females. They should be able to do that too. Sometimes people are more comfortable just with their same sex, and that's okay. That's okay. I don't have a problem. Like, you know what I mean? With that, just like, you know, I've talked to, you know, like lesbians that are now worried about getting like, you know, like attacked for using the women's bathroom, even though they're lesbians, they're females or biological females. They're concerned that someone's going to think that they're a transgender male because they're more butch going into the bathroom.
Well, yeah. I mean, that leads back to the comment that the Red Tent Collective had left just before that about gender stereotypes, right? I mean, there are 40-year-old butch lesbians who call themselves butch lesbians that I have seen online say, for the first time in 25 years, I'm going to grow my hair out because I don't want to be, I need to learn. I just want to see what it's like again. And so they're getting back in touch with their femininity, right? But the stereotypical femininity of having the long hair is what makes them feminine. But that's out of the fear that they're going to be cast type as non-binary or trans because of that umbrella of trans ideology, or gender ideology, excuse me, that uses trans to swallow everybody whole. They just want to swallow us whole. No, thank you.
I have exes that I'm like, oh my gosh, I would be heartbroken if I found out that, these butch women transitioned out of it being like, out of feeling that they had to, because there's women that I dated that you wouldn't be able to tell. And then there was women that I dated that were completely like, very extremely feminine, so there's a variety of women. And I feel like they're being there's an erasure of the tomboys and the femboys and the femme girls. I mean, or I always say it backwards.
But yeah, I feel it. I feel what you're saying. That's what I was telling you before we started. I was getting slack from radical feminists today on Twitter. Last week it was the TRAs. Today it was the radical feminists. So I kind of feel like I've made it on Twitter a little bit. I got hit from both sides because I believe that women should be able to be whoever they want, believe in whatever they want. I stand with women of all race, religions, cultures, ethnicities from around the world. I'm with the Red Tent Collective, and we don't care. We don't care if you're pro-gun. We don't care if you're pro-abortion. These are not our policy issues at this point in time. Right now, our fight is gender ideology, self-ID, harming women, calling lesbians non-men who love non-men. We are not non-men. That makes women a subclass of women. I believe that there are more women are feminists than they like to admit. There is a fear in people when they hear feminist. They think you hate men. We don't hate men, guys. We don't hate them. We love them. We marry them. We have babies with them. We work with them. We work for them. Just because someone is a feminist does not mean that we hate men. We just want the same opportunity and space in society. Like, you could have men's sports. Women wanted women's sports. We got it. Now, why are you men putting on dresses and then coming into our sports to dominate our sports categories, right? Like, there's no reason for that. There should be a way to figure out how to get this type of man to function in the men's category rather than come into women's. I would much rather have trans men have a category in women's sports than trans women in women's sports. If that, I feel like that makes perfect sense. Biologically, do they have an advantage? Sure. So we should have a trans category then.
Well, you're kind of like when you go on the cross X hormones, right? Like whether it's male to female or female to male, you have an advantage over the you have an advantage. It's different. You're in the in between. That's what I talk about with Laura. You know what I mean? Like, she's a transsexual. So I'm like, you're in the in between. You're still going to be stronger than most women, but maybe not as strong as most men. It's like a 30% difference that you're less strong than the average man. So there has to be a way for us to figure this out. And like, I mean, how ridiculous is it as an advanced species that we are? Apparently, we say that we are, that we can't figure out a way to calculate this better, that we can't figure out a way to, like, say, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. And like, let's have an open conversation about it. No, instead of having a conversation about things, what happens? We're called transphobic. I'm questioned whether I'm part of the LGB, and even like and call me homophobic, and it's internalized homophobia. I'm like, what are you talking about?
I got called a Nazi today. So
I've been called a Nazi. I think I was called Nazi today, bigot today, homophobic, transphobic. It washes right over because your labels don't mean anything to me at this point. They don't, because I've been called all this stuff. I'm like, okay, well, I know who I really am. So like, if you want to have a conversation, we can start there. Otherwise, like, name calling, you're not getting anywhere with me. Like, that's just all there is to it. It's just not happening. Like, if you start calling me names, I got called a Becky today. Like, I don't know what that's supposed to mean.
Oh my God. Like a Becky with the good hair, like the Beyonce Becky? Whose husband are you sleeping with? I mean, what reference? Okay. They're just really the reaching. They reach. They say, oh, well, they're obviously a racist too. Never having mentioned race in any tweet at all, and I got called a racist today. I mean, the reaching is just astronomical. I mean, so I started my whole deep dive on TikTok. So I just started Twitter really, like, in the last month. I've really gotten into Twitter and the spaces and all that stuff, and that's how we met. But I met a collective of women, a community of women, because of this. And we actually are forming a nonprofit organization, and it's called the Red Tent Collective. We have petitions in Canada. We're working on them for the UK and the US to protect women's spaces and terminology and all of the things that are just being completely eradicated by gender ideology. We've got a blog and that we're working on, and statistics and news articles, and just like a hub for women to be able to go to. It's really lonely when you peak because you fear you're crazy, because they tell you you're crazy. The gender ideologists will make you feel like you are insane, like you are wrong, that you have not been, like, you're thinking wrong, you're bigoted, you're living in the past, and they're trying to gaslight you. And anybody who's watching or listening, don't allow these people to gaslight you. You are not alone. There are more people out there like-minded in truth and reality that are willing to speak up. And I just happen to be one of those women who's willing to use my voice. So call me a bigot, call me a racist, call me a Nazi. I talked to a literal German today who said, do people understand what Nazis are? Because apparently they're really prevalent right now in Germany. There's some things going on over there. And he thinks that it's absolutely ridiculous that these gender ideologies are throwing around the term Nazi like they are. Oh, fun fact. Oh, man, I should send you this tweet. It's a screenshot. I think I screenshot it. Let me see it. It's called
What is the website for your Red Tent Collective?
It is the redtentcollective.org.
Okay.
It's called Reductio ad Hitlerum. It is reduction to Hitler, also known as playing the Nazi card, an attempt to invalidate someone else's argument on the basis that the same idea was promoted or practiced by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Arguments can be termed Reductio ad Hitlerum if they are fallacious, and Hitler abstained from eating meat or was against smoking. Anyone else who does so is a Nazi. Okay, so contrarily, straightforward arguments critiquing specifically fascist components of Nazism, like Führerprinzip, are not part of the association fallacy. So basically, if somebody calls you a Nazi, you can say, well, you're playing the Nazi card, or Reductio ad Hitlerum, which is like my new favorite phrase to say. Every time that someone calls me a Nazi, I'm just going to type it like and add a wand. Reductio ad Hitlerum, there you go.
Yeah, we need a meme or something. Like, it's absolutely, it's ridiculous, because it's like, it's actually taking away from people who are actual, like, there are real, like, Nazis that do exist, that people out there that really want people to be eradicated. We're not trying to eradicate anybody. That's not the goal. Like that is that is not my goal. It's Steve. Is it yours? You want to eradicate anybody?
I'm not trying to eradicate anyone except for the asshats making money off of harming children, and that's about it.
And there's
predators of any variety.
Yeah, and there's lawsuits coming. There are lawsuits coming.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, I know. I think that right there is what is going to make a change. That's good, because the fact that you can't hear about most of this in the mainstream. You'll hear about it on some more conservative networks or Fox News or the Matt Walshes, but you're not hearing about the majority of this framed in any other way besides being pro medicalization of children on any of the other mainstream media. And so and I don't watch that stuff, but who does watch it? The people that are probably out there. If you watch any of the people that are out there in the street, if you watch Sidewalk Steve or Billboard Chris, and you look at them and they're out there just holding a sign, and the people that approach them, the people that come up to them. I've had Dark Shaman on. Dork Shaman, he goes by too on Twitter. I had him on the show. He's been out there doing the same thing. And it's really crazy that people are so aggressive, but when they actually do have a conversation with them, there's a lot to this they don't know. Because there's so much to this. There's so many layers to this. When I first, I repeated a lot of phrases that people say. I repeated things like born in the wrong body with my daughter when she was 6. I had a friend who was transsexual, and I was like, wow, I feel like, you're so rare. It's such a gem that I get to meet you and get to be part of your life and get to understand, what it means and what you go through, and the surgeries, the transition, the amount of work that you put into it. There's a lot to transitioning to being a passing of the opposite gender for a male to female. It's easier for females to males to pass, but male to female, there are very very distinct things that happen. You can see them, the shape of their jaw, Adam's apple, their voice, their brow. They're very distinct things that most have. The things that quote unquote
clock them. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I think what we need to realize is if we look at it historically, it was one in a million, 1 in 100,000, whatever the number was, right? It was. That's why I thought it was a
gem when I met somebody. I was like, holy shit! You're like a unicorn. You know what I mean? It felt super special.
Wow, this is a very unique human experience. I'm glad that I have had the ability to meet you. I never would have thought. Meeting 1 or 2 transsexuals, you probably, if you're especially in the city, you're in a bathroom, whatever, you do your thing, you go, yeah. You're probably going to interact with them more than you realize. But in a city, especially in New York, you're minding your own fucking business, right? You're not going to, you don't care about
eye contact and shit.
Right. You're not worried about the people next to you as most people wouldn't be. Riding on the metro in DC and stuff, you're doing your thing. You don't really give a shit about who dresses like what. It's again, the city. But when you live in the suburbs, right? And there are families who have 2 children and both of which are non-binary and trans, you start to realize that maybe there's something else going on with an ideology rather than authenticity in struggling with the gender dysphoria. What is the root of the issue that you have that is causing for you to have these issues?
Do you know that even in the DC area, so you brought up DC, the rate, yes. Okay, so the rate of actual transgender or transsexual people, because they don't really differentiate between that when they do the statistics and stuff. The rate in DC alone, we know how it's not a large percent of the population. It was 1% and now it's more 2%. So, but in DC alone, it's almost 3% of the population. That is a concentration. Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah, I covered that before on the show. I was just like, wow, why is there so many in one place? So it was really interesting to hear from people that live in DC that were saying, yeah, there's a lot of transgender people here. yeah, it's a higher concentration than most.
That's interesting, to say the very least. I didn't know that it was so high. You know, because there are people who are transsexual that I talk to that are in DC, and they're like, we don't really hang out with each other, right? So they kind of travel to, they say things like, you know, you travel to see a real tranny, you know, and you have to go and find them in the world. So maybe this is because of the ideology too. So of that 3%, how many of them are actually transgender because of the ideology, and how many of them are actually truly transsexuals? So,
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, it's you don't really like, you can't always figure that part out.
Can't call it.
Oh my gosh,
What are you doing to that thing?
I'm
Mike, what is she doing to you, buddy?
she's
I
like
know.
adjusting the mic a little bit. Sorry, there was no ASMR. Her little, he's
They
got
can't-
eyes.
they
Her little boom thing on her mic. That's funny as hell. It has googly eyes on it for those who are listening. That's great.
His name is Mike.
Mike
We call
the
him
Mike?
Mike. Yes. Yes. I actually have like some felt that I'm supposed to make a joint for Mike. Like, you know.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Mike's gonna have a joint. Yeah. But yeah, like, so when it comes to like this bathroom issue, where do you find, like, what you were saying before, how like there's like the radical feminists are kind of like coming at you going like, no, this is not okay. Like, so
they're
what
coming at me not about the bathroom, about my take on feminism. And I say, you know, it's very anti-feminist to tell a feminist what a feminist is, right? because it is.
Yeah.
And the thing is, feminism is not a monolith, just like being trans is not a monolith. We've talked about the distinction that where there's a group that wants to be known as transsexuals, you know, Buck Angel, Blair White. And then there's the group of transgender women, which are these, you know, a lot of AGPs are mixed up in there. And then the children. So it's what's really nefarious about the gender ideology is it's like the old adults, the adult males that are autogynephiliacs, and the children being indoctrinated that are getting sucked into it. And then the poor transsexuals that are just like watching all of this chaos just collapse around them, right? And then with feminism, with radical feminism, it was news to some feminists today that there's a fifth wave of radical feminism. And they're like, where are you sourcing this? And I'm like, other than the hundreds of women that I've met online and told me that I'm fifth wave, hi, me, I'm fifth, like I'm the source right here. We can sit here and play the same tactics as the TRAs and be as hateful and hurtful in the things that we say. But at the end of the day, trans people they're not going away. We're not going to be able to eradicate them, as some say, which is an extreme to say about any subset of anybody at all. So how do we deal with it? Well, we take away self-ID. We take away the GRA. We focus on women's terminology, getting back to what it is for women. We, you know, address the domestic violence shelters. We address the prisons. We address the sports, and then, you know, the bathrooms. And at the same time, if you're not going to fight for your own space, and we keep telling you, I'm sorry, but there is no medium anymore. There just can be no medium. We're going to have to do our own petitions to fight to create a space for you too, because you don't want to be in the men's. And that is the only kindness that we can do. It's not out of hate. It's not out of spite. It is out of self-preservation as a sex class, to protect ourselves, that we say enough is enough. We're going to try to help, but it would be, I am trying to build bridges, because it would be better to have people working together in unison, trying to create those spaces in society, create those sports, right? Like when you see tweets like Kelly Cadigan, oh, I don't want TERFs in my bathroom. Okay, that's what we asked for. Give it to us. Give it to us. Get your own bathroom. Fight for it. Do you think that you just did something because you just gave us what we want? And then there was you just proved
our point. You just proved our point. Thank you. Like, you know, and most women, if you ask most women, I mean, like maybe that's what we're gonna need to do is have our billboard signs and go ask women, go stand outside of bathrooms. Hey, what do you think about a male being in this bathroom with you? What would you think if a male was walking in this bathroom behind you and your child? How would you feel?
Right.
Maybe that's what we're gonna have to do is go stand at bathrooms and say, how would you feel about this?
It's
I mean,
because women don't want to say anything. You can sit there and say, oh, I don't have a problem. It's totally fine. Like, no big deal. And you think, oh, I'll never have to experience it. And then when you do experience it, you're like, oh, shit, that's a problem, right? Like, this is actually making me uncomfortable. And then you realize I'm not allowed to express my discomfort. I'll be called transphobic. I'll get kicked out of wherever I am for misgendering someone. I'll get a fine. I'll go to jail, right? These are like Michigan, I think it is.
That $10,000
fine.
Yep, I covered that. I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, yeah, because you might hurt their feelings. Like me wanting to stand up for women and children has something that I've always done. I've always done. It just always has been my fight. It's, you know, like when my daughter was in school, I joined organizations that were anti-bullying organizations. I volunteered in her schools. I wanted a better community. So I was out there in my community. That's how you make a better community is you get out there and you be in your community and you fight for your community. What does that mean? I was trying to exclude anybody? No. I was just trying to make it better. And that's the thing is that standing up for my rights as a woman, standing up for LGBT rights doesn't mean that I'm against somebody else's rights. I'm just standing up for mine. I'm standing up for women and children. That doesn't mean I'm against trans people. That's a totally different thing. I'm not out there trying to force them to not be able to exist or not be able to have the surgeries or not have the medicine. I'm not doing that. But when I'm standing up for my rights and for females' rights and for children, that's all it means. It means I'm standing up for female and children's rights. It doesn't equate to something else that is not part of the equation. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that I hate men because I'm standing up for women. It just means that I'm standing up for women. But there seems to be this false equivalence that happens every time.
All the time. And the thing is, like I said earlier, people fear feminists because they think that we're hateful, spiteful, bigoted Nazis. And that's just not fucking true, right? Like, you deserve to have a scholarship if you work your ass off and do what you want to do. But your scholarship as a trans woman should not supersede that of a female's scholarship. There should be its own category of trans for scholarships if that's so fucking be it. But even if it was a trans man who got some kind of a scholarship, whether it's academic or whatever, like let's take out sports. Let's just talk about academia, right? You're a biological woman. You could still theoretically, because I don't know, I know that the HRT and stuff like that, like it messes with your brain, but I don't know what it does to academia, like intellect level, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not going to make someone smarter or dumber necessarily, maybe more naive because they haven't matured, right? But when it comes to looking at a book, right, and being able to withhold or retain that specific information, we don't know because the studies aren't there, right? So
I don't know what it does to the brain in that way. I mean, our brain is complex. We don't even know everything about our own brains. We don't even know how everything works in our own bodies yet.
I know.
We really don't. Really don't. We are very ignorant when it comes to even our own bodies. Like just let that sink in, everybody, for just a second. Like, what? We don't know everything. We can't cure everything. We don't, you know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of things about our brain that we do not understand.
It's horrifying to think that we're modifying children and chemically castrating them and physically mutilating them, excuse me. And, you know, it started for me talking about me as a woman. You know, I've always been kind of a feminist. I played video games. I talked shit to the guys who talked shit to me and told me to get a sandwich. I'm like, did that make your dick grow a few inches? Like, do you feel better? Like that is an example of misogyny. You don't have to be misogyny, and that doesn't make you masculine. There's a difference between being a masculine man that is encouraging and loving and caring and genuine and cares to be a male figure over your family or whatever your situation is, and the difference
you're describing Steve.
And a difference between misogyny, where you belittle the woman and you belittle her ability to do the work, you belittle her ability to function in society or be capable of doing what a man could do, like income wise or whatever, or belittle the housework that she does. There is a difference. And when people
I've
say,
had
oh,
that
that's
relationship
toxic masculinity, when people say, oh, that's toxic masculinity, I think that is dangerous. I think it needs to be called toxic misogyny. And masculinity is it's like, I think of the old school cowboys, not the ones who beat their wives, but like the the kind that comes home after farming all day to his wife and says, hey, honey, how you doing? You know what I mean? Just like, I'm fine, darling. How are you today? How's the Lord? You know, like a masculine man that you want to wrap your arms around you because he gives a shit and makes sure that you have everything that you could possibly need. Like that to me is masculinity. To not even second guess doing something that is for the betterment of the women in his life without even thinking twice.
Being supportive and a loving person and just being an actual real partner. That's the thing. That is what that and like the whole I've had the really toxic, abusive relationships. I was in a domestic violence shelter and with my daughter, and I remember seeing other women there abusing their kids at the domestic violence shelter and having to flee the domestic violence shelter because I didn't feel safe there because of other women. It's not always men that make women feel uncomfortable, but
it's true.
You know what I mean? And that's another thing. Like it seems to be like, you know, I was fleeing from an abusive relationship. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that those women weren't then abusive to their kids, because they were. They were physically harming their kids because that's what they saw and that's what they went through. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, like I can't be in this. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, I gotta go. So I ended up fleeing the domestic violence shelter because I saw women abusing. So like it doesn't necessarily mean like, you know, that statistically wise, women are less likely to be the ones to do all the things, but they're not exempt. And that's something that we always need to acknowledge at the same time, because I think that men get the brunt of a lot of things. You know what I mean? They are just like, society puts the brunt of everything on them. Or if the male is the one who stays at home and the woman is the one who decides to work, suddenly it's like not okay and he is seen as a weaker sex. And that's not the case. That's not always the case. Like that, I know a lot of people that did that, and everyone has their strengths in their relationship. It's whether or not it's a healthy relationship and it's a supportive relationship. That's what matters.
Yeah,
that's where the core of it really matters. And we need to praise that in society, as opposed to putting all the weight and all the burden on just like the men have to carry all the weight and the women are just a damsel in distress. Like we need to break that stereotype and just be like, all right, well, sometimes he's stronger at something and sometimes I'm stronger at something. And sometimes I'm stronger than fucking grown ass men. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding at all. Like I drive a 15-foot, full-size van. I don't, you know, I have more power to, I always joked around like, like I break the stereotype norms. I have more power tools than men. I'm, you know what I mean? Like I'm a freaking badass, freaking Viking warrior. Like that is my ancestry. That is who I am. But does that make Steve less of a man? Absolutely not. But does that mean that sometimes I have to open the jar? Yes, sometimes it does. It's true. I have weird, me and my daughter both, we have like really incredibly like a weird like strength. Like I've been like, you know, there's been times where I would like, you know, like I would be with the breaker bar and, you know, doing the lug nuts or whatever on the tire. And then, you know, my big old like male friend working on my van with me comes over, who's like, you know, 6'2". And I don't know how much does Eric weigh. He's a big dude. And he'll be like, go like, oh yeah, let me just make sure. And he'll be like, oh, what? Like, yeah, I don't need you to tighten them for me. I got it, but thank you for having my back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I break that stereotype norm, but that doesn't mean he's less of a man just because I'm really a strong woman. Like,
Exactly.
but you know, like we need to remember this as we're walking through the world, that not everybody is going to fit into a stereotype and into the norm and into all of that. You know what I mean? And I mean, I would be out there working on my van in a sundress when like, you know, like it doesn't matter. And like, you know, walking around barefoot and all the guys are looking at me like, how could you walk on all these rocks barefoot and work on the van like this? And I'm just like, whatever. I'm just a tough ass bitch. Like, what are you talking about? Get over it.
And see, I, as a feminist, believe like you should be able to literally do that. Just live your fucking life. Be however you want to be without the stereotypes telling you that you can or can't do it. You know what I mean? That's what I believe as a feminist. And I get it that the patriarchy has it is why feminism came to be. But right now we got bigger problems as feminists, and that is gender ideology and that is self-ID. And I will stand by that. We can go back and dance around the discussion of the patriarchy, but what is being used by the patriarchy right now, that would be gender ideology. That would be men dressing up as women, claiming to be better than women as women, right? Like this is our fight, and we need to unite regardless of all of the political nuances and ideologies between them.
Yeah, no matter how you can cosmetically change your body, it doesn't turn you into the opposite gender. Or the opposite sex. Exactly. It just doesn't happen. We don't have that technology. We're not doing like freaking transplants or something. I'm sure that in the future they'll be able to download your conscious and have that whole transhumanist agenda that's happening, and they'll be able to do it. I'm sure that will be in the future, that they'll be able to be like, oh, you want to be a different one? Okay, well, we're gonna download you into a different conscious.
Have you looked into queer theory and the transhumanism agenda and how they're intertwined?
Not that like those exact phrasing, but like let me know. Go ahead, tell me.
I don't know enough. I don't know enough. It's on my list, okay? But that there's like she's not coined as, but in my mind, I see her as like the mother of queer theory, because every time I look up queer theory, this lady keeps popping up, but I keep forgetting her name. Because like I said, it's on my list and I keep just sending shit to my Gen chat for myself and my own little personal Discord, right? So I just keep dropping things in. So this woman,
there's so many layers
to it. In the 80s, she's talking all queer theory and everything. And then all of a sudden I find this one video of her talking about the trans manifesto and how it can be used with the queer theory. And I'm like, hold on. And I'm like rabbit holing at like 3 a.m. and I popped up some YouTube video and like I passed out. And the next day I was like, son of a gun. Now I'm watching things about like Colleen and Adam and the things going on over that side of YouTube. And I'm like, this is not what I was listening to when I passed out last night. And then I'll like lose the video and I'll go and I'll find it later on when I think about it again. But there is a correlation between queer theory and the trans manifesto, and utilizing it and weaponizing trans for queer theory. And it's like, I know it's a whole another conspiracy that I have not yet dived into.
And I don't like the word queer. I will tell you, being somebody I'm turning 43 this month. So like when I was growing up in the 90s, there were homophobic people. There were hateful people. I lost friends. There are people that I lost in my adult life because they didn't like who I was and my sexuality, that I dated women and all this and that. And I'm not calling Steve a woman, by the way. But
Steve. Just give the resume prior to Steve, yeah.
But like
as long as you call me Steve, I'm cool.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I just gotta insert this real quick because it was funny. One time he got offered like money to put on a pair of my leggings. He wouldn't do it.
Oh, how much were they gonna give you? $50? Like you should have been like $50. $50
more. They offered more than that. Yeah. I know.
Steve, what are you doing?
I know. What I was thinking. I really could use a new guitar, like fuck.
You should have done it.
I've had a few.
Should have done it.
forgot what I was saying. Oh, the word queer. But like that word was used against us. It was a hateful term. So a lot of us that are like of the, the now we're like the older, LGBs or whatever, the people that were originally part of that, like we're like, what? Why is it queer everything? Every time I turn around, like it's queer this, queer that. And the people are like, yeah, we took back the word. And I'm like, that was used as a hateful word and I don't like it. And it's really weird. So it just shows that even within under the LGB or LGBNT and all the letters, we're not a monolith. We're not all the same. We don't all feel the same. There's people that use it. That's the same thing with like other words that, you know what I mean? And I'm not like, oh, you can't use it. I'm just saying I don't use it. I think it's an offensive word. There's other words that I don't use that I found out were offensive for other people for other reasons, and I don't use them either. So like it's more of like a respect thing that I don't use it. But yeah, every time I hear it, I'm like I get that like. I get like like a weird
if someone is identifying as queer at this day and age, they are definitely indoctrinated into the cult of gender ideology, and it's very hard to get people to listen to you or anything. If you say one thing they don't like within the first 30 seconds, they completely dismiss your entire argument. They shut down because they refuse to listen to anything that's outside of what they believe to be true or the way they think that it should be phrased. And honestly, gender ideologists are really disrespectful and hateful and hurtful, and they try to be. I think there's a lot of self-loathing inside of that ideology, and they just project it onto everyone else who doesn't hate themselves. They've accepted themselves for who they are, and we live in it. I don't know how else to say it, so...
I want to bring up real quick before we go too far away from what we were talking about, the Red Tent Collective. I wanted to make sure that we showcase what you're working on. Is it gonna? There it goes. And we'll make sure we put like the links to your channel and to this and everything in the description so everyone can find you there as well. But yeah, I was looking through this the other day, and I know I feel like I have like such a list of like all these like like shows that I would need to catch up on and like research that I need to do. I have like an ongoing like and I have an author coming on the 10th of August, so I'm like I got to make sure I'm reading the book, but I'm really digesting it. Like I have such homework for myself. But like I was looking through it, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So give us a little bit of a rundown about what this exactly is and what it's about.
So the Red Tent Collective, it's about women, honestly, our terminology, our spaces, our history. It's a space for us to be able to educate women on women's history, current events that are impacting women, current laws. We've got petitions going in the UK to try to combat some of the laws that they've made that are damaging to women, such as domestic violence shelters being forced to allow self-ID'd trans women into the spaces, and women are being raped for it. April 2023, there's a case of that having occurred. So we are just trying to do what we can in our small little pocket of the internet, trying to spread awareness to the things that are happening that are impacting us, as well as trying to provide history of women around the world who have made impacts on history and have kind of added to what it means to be women today and yesterday. So the Red Tent is a reference to when young girls would come of age, they'd kind of be accepted into the circle of older women and learn about what it meant to become a woman. And so we chose to become the Red Tent Collective because we feel like there is neglect in regards to young girls today understanding women's history, what it is to be a woman, your body, who you are. Obviously, we're trying to we want for adult women who have the ability to vote and sign petitions and to speak up and to be able to go take action in their local provinces or states or, districts and stuff, to be those who sign up. We have an email. You can sign up and get notifications for when we have new petitions or newsletters and things like that. And so if you go to the site, please, by all means, do register for that. I know one of my ladies will be very happy to hear me say this. But we are taking small steps. We're actually going to have a podcast come out called The Circle of Fire. And we're going to talk about stories about women, things that are going on, kind of similar to things, kind of the style you do, but a little bit more streamlined. We're also going to have women from like Germany, the UK, Ireland, Canada, the US. So we're going to have a global perspective on these stories that we're highlighting and spreading awareness from. So really, we are a collective of women that are worldwide. And we wanted to create a space for women like ourselves who are being called TERFs and radical feminists and transphobic and bigoted and being gaslit and lied to. And when we started, literally, we just started throwing data in. We're like, wait a minute, look at this statistic. I mean, I alone looked at data that I had collected, and I had over 1,100 posts of things that I had found, and articles and just TikToks and things like that of people spreading misinformation. And it was absolutely wild to start connecting all of these dots. And not everyone has the ability or the mental strength, I would say, to take the time to dive in the way that you, Lucky, like me, dive into these things. I mean, because some of this is dark. Like, I got to tell you, I'm already, I have endometriosis this week. This weekend, I don't feel good. I took a break from my podcast for the week. I'm looking into autogynephilia. This shit is dark. It is not for the faint of heart. And it is not something that, you want to just consume yourself with all entirely. And this is a place where women can go.
Sleep.
I've lost sleep. We've all lost sleep. We wanted to create a place where women could go find information that is important to them. We have it set up for, Canada, the US, the UK, Ireland. We are separating them so you can find petitions that are set up for your country. And so these are being set up by women within those countries as well. And we're really trying. The site's about a week old. It's about 5 days old, so it's very new. And I'm excited. I didn't realize I was going to be able to have the opportunity to showcase it here. So I do appreciate you, Lucky, for allowing me to do it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
I messaged the girls and I said, hey, Lucky wants to talk about the collective. So just an FYI, if you want to pop in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, thank you everybody who's here. And I would absolutely love to have, if you want to have some of the women from the collective come on and do like a panel, like that would be an awesome show. Like, and we could really, like help promote it and put the information out there. Like I'm always about helping everybody rise up together. Because when we do that, we're stronger. Whether or not we agree about everything, it doesn't matter. But what matters is that we help each other through our struggles, that we help each other come out on top of this. Because right now we are being silenced. And it's by force. It's by design. And we need to collectively do this. And like I've done, women's only sweat lodges, and and I helped build the sweat lodges, and I'm done the lodges, and oh my gosh, women are, it's an amazing bond, and it's empowering to have a collective of women. And, I feel like we can be very disconnected with the internet and fighting with these random people or having conflicts, but there are ways that we can come together and support each other that is just beyond that they can't take that from us. They can't take the bond of us being women and destroy it unless we let them.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Oh, I'm so glad you guys are here. I'm so glad we were able to showcase this. I didn't even know it was this like new. I feel so special.
It's literally we've got poetry being written and blogs that are being created. Storm is actually heading some of the podcast content and stuff like that, and it's really just been this wildly empowering collective effort to spread awareness. And we share those gays against groomers, transition justice, different things that we found to be important to this fight against gender ideology. So as we move on or move along and we start to network and meet new people, we're starting to add those as well. And it's, nobody knows us yet. We're very new. We're very new. So you're the first. Yeah.
I popped the cherry.
Yes. Yes, you did.
Well, everybody go on over there and check it out.
Yeah, and here's your podcast right here. And see, if you go to that, you can go and you can see it brings you right to Gamma's show.
Excellent.
And it's so awesome. Everybody should check out her content. She does awesome work. I've been catching up on some of it. I need to catch up on more of it. Like like I just feel like I have like such a list. I'm like, all right, I kind of like go back and forth to like the different the different shows and everything like that. It's like, yeah, it's a lot to digest, especially when we're talking about something of this magnitude. Like most people, I think when they think of the gender ideology, like I've even gotten pushback from people about calling it an ideology. I'm like, well,
it's an ideology.
It is, because not everybody agrees with it. Like, you know what I mean? It's not written in stone. It's not like, like this is, that's just not what it is.
Episode 9 of Exposing the Cult. I literally read you from the Britannica what an ideology is. Gender ideology 100% fits every single facet of what makes an ideology. And it is not based in truth and reality. And it is used by nations or leadership to, like I said earlier, to have that swing of totalitarian control. They take advantage of an ideology to basically like weaponize and monopolize on the situation and get people to stray away from truth and reality, but focus on this and distraction, like don't fall for it. Don't fall for it.
Yeah, don't let people gaslight you. Don't fall for it. Like, I mean, like we're telling you to think for yourselves. We're telling you to do your own research. That is not what a cult tells you to do. A cult tells you to not think for yourself. A cult tells you that
right, you're wrong. Yeah. You're wrong. That's a bad thought. That is a terrible thought. You know what I mean? Like they kind of tell you what not to do. So yeah.
And this is your first episode that you did, and you went right in, and you covered Dr. Money right in this one.
Yeah. The gender identity. He was the father of gender ideology. Whether or not these trans right activists want to admit it, 100%, John Money was the father of gender identity. Otherwise, why would the Kansas naturalist have 44 iterations of a literal pamphlet that they distribute worldwide? And all you have to do is request it. That talks about gender ideology and gender identity and names John Money the father of gender identity and ideology. Like what? If he's not the father of it, why is Kansas naturalist from the school of like biology, sharing this as such? That's terrifying to me, actually.
And I mean, he's been praised as being like all of like, there is so much, like I've covered Dr. Money and Dr. Kinsey, and like there were things that I was covering about them that I was like, okay, I can't even read this. Like I have to stop. Like, because I'm on YouTube and I felt like, you know what I mean? Like this,
I'll never get monetized here.
Yeah.
No, you can support me at exposingthecult.com and buy merch though. I bought the domain. But no, YouTube, I'll never get monetized. And that's because I'm too candid and I speak the truth and I don't muddle. I don't hide it. It is what it is. Why are we forced into censoring our verbiage Why? My shit's marked over 18. What do I have to hide other than to protect someone's feelings from an adult? If an adult cannot hear the words that I am saying in the way that I am saying them, then obviously there is some kind of deficiency or issue going on with them that is not my problem, because I should be able to say certain words to adults and be able to be honest. That's
my content is marked at 18 plus as well. And, you know, like it is not for children. You know what I mean? Like I talk about very adult topics, very like, I mean, I've done shows on like sex workers and what, you know what I mean? Like all like real heavy stuff we talk about here. We call it Dirty Burrito After Dark. You know what I mean? For a reason. Like,
oh my God.
I'm not talking about things that are usually that are like, you know, super kid friendly, you know, like I want to be able to have real adult conversations and it not have to hold back because it's definitely not a kid's conversation. A lot of what, you know, what we talk about.
Exactly.
Yeah, my
content's for women and men who are willing to listen to me. Usually they're gay. The gays and the lesbians really like me. Apparently, I have lesbian energy. I don't know. I'm a heterosexual woman. I've been told that I have lesbian energy, and I'm like, okay, I don't like the vajayjay, but that's fine. I had to call my best lesbian friend up the other day, and I said, I need to ask you a question. She's like, yeah. I said, do I have lesbian energy? And she goes, I have to think about this. I would say ally vibes, not necessarily lesbian. She's like, because I know you though. And I'm like, yeah, okay. The internet thinks otherwise.
I kind of get that from you though. Like I get like that, like really close. Like I will like be right there, like beside you. Like, you know what I mean? I got your back kind of thing.
Right.
I wouldn't say lesbian vibe. But like, I don't know what the people, if they are, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll let you know if it changes because I'm honest like that too. You know what I mean? I'm like that. I'm like the super, like, I don't have a filter. Like, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you how I feel. Maybe it's being neurodivergent. I don't know. But like, I don't like Steve had to get used to it because like, you know, you go through life with people who don't like really tell you the truth and they kind of like dance around it, and then you get with somebody who like tells you the truth whether you want to hear it or not. It's not necessarily an easy thing to go through. It's like, I'm not being mean, I'm just telling the truth, and the truth doesn't, you know what I mean, the truth doesn't care if it's a nicer and you know what I mean, like it just is what it is. Like if you look fat in something and you ask me, do I look fat? I might say, you know, in a nice way, like, yeah, there's something that might be a little bit more flattering on you, or like, you know what I mean? Like, get a bigger size or a smaller size, or da, da, da. I'm going to tell you the truth. Do I want you walking around like an idiot? Like, if you, you know what I mean? Like, why else would you ask me? You know, like,
exactly.
So that's who I am. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say something to purposely be mean to anybody, you know, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I mean,
yeah, I think you and I vibe pretty well because we're very blunt people, and we don't like, you know, we do want to be kind, but we have to be real. We have to have reality and be able to speak to it. And if we can't speak to it, we're not being honest with ourselves. And that's what makes us fearlessly authentic, is because you know, we say at the end of it, here's the root of it, right? Like we can sit here and dance around this or dance around that, but the truth of it is, it's tough. It's gonna be a tough call, like the bathroom thing, right? It's a tough fucking thing.
Oh, like I said, I hate the bathroom thing so much.
I hate it too, but it's always talked about, and I have to be intentional when I do spaces, and I'm like, no bathrooms. We're not talking about them. We're going to talk about everything else except for them, because
it's more than just a bathroom. It's more than just a bathroom. Women change in there. It's our, you know what I mean? Like, and men might not understand that. And I've gone and peed in a bunch of men's bathrooms before. They're, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you know, like when I've had to, I've gone in randomly to the men's bathroom, like they were like single use ones at the gay bar with other women that like, because we couldn't get in the female bathroom or whatever. And like one girl pissed in the freaking sink while I'm pissing on the toilet and I didn't know her, but like, it's a different thing. I wouldn't do that with a guy.
That is a wild. Yeah. Okay.
I've done some wild stuff. I'm not going to lie.
You know, like, I've always hated sinks in the bathroom, but now even more. Fucking more. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. Like really, you don't know. Like but yeah, I was like, "Oh, okay. This is what we're doing." Okay. I thought we were just going to take turns peeing, but she just hopped up and did her I was like, "Oh. All right, so we're doing this. Hi, nice to meet you." Like, we're peeing together.
Hello, how are ya? Wow.
I mean, I'm the chick that's like, I would rather like, you know, go pee in the woods than go use a public bathroom. But like, that's just me. You know what I mean? That's just who I am. I'd rather just go squat in the woods, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Not everybody's there. Yeah.
Just piece of advice, not speaking from personal experience, but because I witnessed someone do this once. Don't wipe yourself with a leaf. It's probably going to be poison ivy.
It's more likely than not. Just assume that it might be poison ivy, oak, or something that's going to make you itch. You're probably going to have a reaction. You probably don't want that there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy because I got poison. I got poison. I don't know if it was poison ivy or poison oak, but I got it really bad. Like, we had gone like hunting for worms and stuff in the woods. And like, I got it like all over my arms. Like, no. It was awful. It was everywhere. And I remember it was really bad. Like, and I used like all the natural stuff, but like, it wasn't going away. And I ended up having to go to the doctor to get like a cream or something because they have like, you know, they're like magical. These
creams. Yeah, the anti-itch creams and all that shit. Yeah. The actual medication.
Yeah.
In those pores, man. Yeah.
So like I went and got that stuff because it was just so bad. And they wanted to prescribe me prednisone too. And like, you know, like that's a steroid. Because that's how bad it was, because it was like so severe. And me personally, I think about this like all the time, like the people that are taking like these hormones and stuff. I can't even like take prednisone because it's like I have like rage, like roid rage or whatever. I don't know. I get like really this like on it, right? Like not myself, like totally like, and that's on like a low dose. Right.
So and they say that testosterone like really fucks with you. Really, like women get really rage filled from this high levels of testosterone. We naturally have very minute levels, right? But that's like a balance, a hormonal
women with PCOS can have more testosterone naturally. Like I have PCOS, so like I dealt with that a lot more when I was younger than I do now. But but yeah, like I mean, I had cysts on my ovaries that would rupture. I remember being like 16 and like 3:00 in the morning and going, "Oh my God, I have to call my mom. I'm at a friend's house. Like something is wrong." I'm thinking something is like, you know, I need an emergency room. So that's how I found out that I had PCOS and that I had cysts on my ovaries that were rupturing as a teenager. That happened to me many, many times where I had to go and like go get shots of like Demerol and like stuff like that because there wasn't much that they did for me.
Yeah, they wouldn't diagnose me. They said, "Oh yeah, you had an ovarian cyst that probably ruptured. That's why you've got all this extra fluid. Like it just is what it is." It wasn't until I was 25, moved to the state that I'm in now, and had said, "Oh yeah, I watched a BuzzFeed video of women talking about their medical issues, and 3 of the women had endometriosis." And I said, "Oh my God." I went to my doctor. I said, "I think I have endometriosis. Here's why." Listed all my symptoms, and he goes, "I have the perfect doctor to send you to." And he's like smiling, and he's like, you know, says the doctor's name, writes it down, says, "Call him up, schedule." He's scheduling with a man, which weirded me out. till I found out that this doctor actually trained all of the residents in obstetrics, right? And then he's actually chief of surgery now at the hospital over obstetrics, right? This guy, like bald cowboy boots in the office, very handsome. But he checked me out and he was like, huh? I said, what do you mean, huh? Did you hum a hoo-ha? He's like, yeah, I can see your uterus. And I'm like, you shouldn't see my uterus. And he was like, no, I was in surgery within 2 weeks. He said that because it had been for so long that my uterus had flip folded and inverted. Like if your belly button's here, your uterus is supposed to be like this. There's tendons that hold it. It was flipped. So it flipped this way. And it was also inverted and folded on itself. So it did like an S. And it was like a water balloon. And when you squeeze a water balloon, imagine like the bevels and the pressure. And it like, basically he went in there, he repositioned it. My entire body relaxed. He said it had it been like 3 more months, it would have ruptured and I would have had sepsis and I could have died if at the very least I never would have been able to have children. And it was because of that BuzzFeed video that I self-diagnosed. I had been having ovarian cysts since I was 9 years old. I didn't get my first period till I was 13, but I experienced those symptoms for years prior. And my mom was always like, oh, you're being dramatic, blah, 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 blah. When I had my surgery, she cried and she said, I should have listened to you. And then when I had my child 2 weeks before he was born, my mother was diagnosed with stage 3/4 endometrial cancer. And my mom had a full radical hysterectomy 4 days before my son was born. So it was not lost to me. Yeah, it was not lost to me. Having my child after my mother's ability to have a child was literally ripped out of her. Like that I was thinking about while giving birth. Also not having my son, circumcised, right? Because I feared him having, like, I literally am like giving birth and I'm like, if I circumcise him and they cut off his, if they accidentally fuck up, they'll make him a girl. And I was like, can't do it. And that was 2 years before I knew who John Money and David Raymer were. Like the fact that I 2 years ago had a phobia about something happening to my infant speaks volumes about the seeds of gender ideology and like that this climate that we're in today. But everything happens for a reason. And women, hey, just an FYI to those listening, women are not close to being men because they are infertile or they have had a hysterectomy or go through menopause. These are specific to women experiences, the female experience, and it is not used as a way to justify a transgender woman being closer to being a woman. Saying that is inherently sexist. It's rude, and honestly, it's what's the word? It should be considered offensive for it. It's offensive. It's inherently offensive. For, a community that's like, that's offensive. You certainly don't sugarcoat how you feel about women who have issues.
Offended over the pronoun issue, but yet they you know what I mean? We say something like that is offensive to us and we get like all kinds of backlash against it. It's like, that's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. We're trying to be respectful here, but you're pushing us. You pushed us too far. It's gone too far at this point.
Really. It really has. But, that's why we're here. Well, that's why I'm here. I mean, it pushed me to this. I stopped making my gaming content and I erased all my gaming content because I saw these people getting doxxed and I was like, I don't know what the hell I said online for the last 2 years. 300 videos, live streams over 2 years. And I deleted fucking everything, all of it. Everything from my Twitch, from my YouTube. And I was like, enough's enough. I'm going to, I have a responsibility as a woman, as a mother to stand up for children because I will not allow my child to be raised in this. I won't do it. I don't have to raise my child in a church. Why do I have to raise my child in gender ideology? Absolutely not. It is my choice as a mother to raise my child the way I want to raise them without them being indoctrinated into something I don't believe in or support or subscribe to. And so that's why I'm here. If anybody from my gaming past, like some random tra is wondering, I had to make a video. I had to make a video on TikTok addressing some man who was like, Do you remember when you made gaming content? Like creepy, like scary movie, creepy. You know the laugh from Scary Movie?
Sure.
Yeah. Like it was gross and weird, and I did not like it. And I responded, and I was go ahead, Steve.
I wanted to just shout out all the hate watchers and stuff that we don't see, because there's plenty of those people sitting in the shadows, all just
there's people that like,
talking to their oppression.
They admit to like hate watching, and they'll like talk about it behind a block, and they'll reply to my post behind a block, and I'm just like, hey, thanks for the view. You're interacting with my content, so I appreciate it.
I do the same thing. I just say thank you so much for engaging with my content. I really appreciate you helping me spread awareness to expose the cult. And it really pisses people off.
That's beautiful.
It really does.
We are
what else
very
are we gonna do?
We're very similar. Like
what else are we gonna do?
We're going to be trouble together. We're going to be good trouble is what we're going to do. We're going to support each other and be good trouble.
Yes, you are so knowledgeable. And I'm so grateful for being on here. I don't know how long your episodes usually are, but like we've been going almost 3 hours here. We've been having a good old time.
Yeah, this is about like we do usually like 2 to 3 hour streams. And it's fun because we can really dive into it. Like we can really like explore whatever it is that we're going to talk about, and like really feel like we're not like stuck on like a time constraint. You know what I mean? I love that. I think that's like huh?
It's very nice of her to spend that.
Yeah, it's so awesome for you to spend that much time with us. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm appreciating coming on the podcast and you wanting to hold me up here for that long. I just saw my toddler walk by me because I have like glass doors, and so I peeked I thought it was the dog at first, right? Because I got big dogs; they're about the same height, and that's why I turned myself because I saw him walk by with a toy. And I'm like, it is 11:45, sir. Why are you not in bed? So his dad's probably having trouble with him right now.
Oh, okay. Well, we can wrap up, and you are welcome to come back like anytime. I'm dead serious with that. Like, let's do a panel with the Women's Collective. Let's, you know what I mean? Let's showcase some of the research and the work that you're doing. And please, everybody, please follow Gamma. Like, let's get her some more subscribers. Let's help her.
Thank you.
Like how is the Red Tent Collective that you're doing? Is that strictly for women, or are you?
Anybody can subscribe to it. Men can subscribe to it too if they want to support, sign petitions. It doesn't have to just be women who are receiving the newsletters and stuff. Anybody can do it. You're all more than welcome. In transsexuals who want to support our initiatives can as well. At the end of the day, I think, like I said, we align on majority of where we stand, except the bathrooms is that final thing. So I know.
That's so hard.
It's literally it. That's like the biggest issue that I found. And what are you going to do? You just got to keep moving forward and trying to check all the boxes as you can as you go along.
So what is the name of your, it's Exposing the Cult? Is that what the name of it is also as well? Like for them to search for it?
Or so for my podcast, you can search Exposing the Cult. Yeah, it's also on Rumble. It's just, Exposing the Cult -episode 1 or 2 or whatever. You'll be able to find me. I'm also Gamma Raes. And so if you look up Gamma Raes, you should be able to find it that way. I don't know. Might be kind of shadow banned. But
on Twitter, you're the opposite though, right? Like, right.
I'm at Raes Gamma. Yeah.
Raes
on
Gamma.
Twitter.
So we'll make sure we put all that down in the description of this video too. So if you're watching later on and you want a hate stalker or you want a love stalker, you can find her.
Or you want to stalk me and then realize that I've helped you be exposed to the cult and then thank me, which happens every once in a while. Not often, not as often as I'd like, but it does happen. You can DM me. I appreciate that. But there's a link tree on all of my socials that has everything connected to everything. So that's Linktree, Gamma Rays. So the / Gamma Rays too, if you know Linktree, that makes your life easier.
Yeah, we'll put all that down below too, so
Definitely.
everyone can find you and find your content. And I'm really excited to dive into more of your content, because you do a lot of the research, the research end of it. So it's like it's really great to be able to do that, and to just to find sources. I love source material.
Source
me
too.
Material. I'm like,
my format really is like, before I do the episodes, I'll find sources, I'll kind of skim them, and I'll say, okay, I want to do this section, or I'll read this whole damn article, and I will pull it out and say, we're going to talk about this today. We're reading from the Britannica, and I will read it. And then as I'm going through, I say, now let's look at this. For example, I'll say, let's take a look and see an example of how this is being implemented. And then I pull up a TikTok video or a tweet or a thread, and I show examples of how things are manifesting in society because of gender ideology.
So there's a question real quick before we wrap up. Greg Walker, third party, said, Gamma, how would you feel about people who are on the right coming to your site?
So are you talking about mine exposing the cult, or are you talking about the Red Tent Collective? So for the Red Tent Collective, this is it's a group of women who run this, including myself. And anyone is welcome. Any woman from any side is welcome. At the end of the day, we have to set our politics aside and stop saying, oh, the liberal women, oh, the right-wing women. We need to sit there and say, okay, we as women have an issue, and we need to set all of the other bullshit aside, and the Democrat versus Republican, conservative versus liberal, Labor Party versus whatever, like, we need to set it all aside. And we need to say,
all the labels.
This is happening globally. I mean, there's a push for globalism. There is a push for globalism. That's a danger to all of us. That takes away what we know as a society, and having our countries and our states and everything to have like a global overreach, which would be certain people with lots of money and power. We know they already control everything, but do we really need to just let them control everything? Right? No, we shouldn't.
No,
so yeah, the answer to that is no for 200, please. Thank you. But anybody is welcome to come to the site. If you go to the site and you just want to get the newsletter and sign up for it, there's an email button you can click, sign up, follow, see the things that we're starting to produce and put out there. I mean, in the coming weeks, we hope to have way more content showing up on the site. But like I said, this baby is brand new, just popped out like a week ago. So we're going to be growing the things that we have, and the references and the sources and the petitions. And we can't get petitions to move without people from all walks of life coming and signing them. Anyway, I think we have an active Canada, like the Canada petition is our current active petition. So please, by all means, go take a look, sign it, check it out, support it. The signatures mean everything.
Well, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you. Please hit that like button, dislike it if you don't like it. I don't care. I just hope you interact with it. But we are happy to have you. And oh, yep. Look here. We got a comment I should put up. We are politically blind. Everyone, please come and sign up if you have an email written by, and you'll get an email written by me. Nice. We will. I'll sign up. You'll know which one's mine. You'll know which email's mine, because it will say Lucky Burrito, and you'll be like, oh, yep. That's got to be the right one. Well, thank you so much. Stay right there, and we will see everybody else soon. Have a great night.
See you guys.
Bye.